Her eyes seemed to glaze slightly as she thought back, recounting the fight she saw. Quote. It was such a strange style. He killed them all so quickly, it wasn't like any style I've ever seen. What harrowing school did he learn from? None. Nezu could say that with confidence. Midoriya never had time to learn at a harrowing school in his schedule and attended some dump in the middle of nowhere with no budget. I'm not entirely sure on this, but I believe Ken is self-taught. And with how many weapons he's packing, that's impressive. Could you speak up? I didn't catch that last part. Quote. Nah, but on a further note, Ken never attended a hero school. He's not a hero, after all. There are other places to learn how to fight. Like, she was actively taking notes on what he said. Was she trying to mimic Ronin's style? Now that was adorable. On the streets, in dojos, in the military. Now that he was saying it, maybe he should make learning at least one martial art a necessary class for the first years. There was no harm in it, and it would only help them further down the line. He archived that thought for the future. He could tell Ronin about it to try and win him over. There are a lot of places to learn and practice fighting if you're willing to try. I guess I'd need to ask him that. She bit her lip as she thought through her questions, muttering to herself. Should have asked him that the first time. Ah, can you tell me what Ken used to do since he's retired? Nope. Yeah, I figured. Does Ken work here? That would be a hero school. But I guess yes, technically he's working here for a small period. Technicalities like these were fun, kept people guessing. He loved it when he could answer questions with even more confusing answers. Thank you for the answers, Nezu. They weren't very helpful. Yukio smiled politely but was still honest at the end of the day. I want to meet Ken and ask him more questions, but I don't think you're the person to ask. Nope, I might be the worst person, he hates me. I tried to ask him some questions a few days ago, but since he was trying to leave he didn't want to talk with me at all. If I could arrange a time where we could just talk though, I could get some useful answers. Why are you so interested in him anyway? Something going on there. Come on Tilda, give me some details. I just want to learn about him as a person from Maruko. They seem so close, but Maruko doesn't actually know anything about him. As her friend, I think there shouldn't be so many secrets between them. That's it. It's the first reason. The second was much more minor. I wanted to learn how to fight like him. There was the reason Nezu had expected. It was what most people, including him, admired first about the vigilante. But that seems like another thing I need to ask him in person. If only I had some time to talk with him. Yukio fiddled with the couch's armrest as she thought, then looked over suddenly. Ah, could you perhaps schedule an appointment between us? Please. Nezu played along with a smile. An appointment between you two? Yes. Every time I see him he's trying to do something else, so I end up getting in the way, but if I could schedule some time with him so he's not trying to do anything else while we're talking, he'll probably, she caught Nezu's amused stare and corrected herself. He's more likely to give me answers. More likely to, but not guaranteed. Ken doesn't respect heroes the same way most people do, so your ranking doesn't mean much to him. Granted, he does like you, so maybe you'll have better luck than most. Although he's very hard to get any answers out of. Nezu, a moment. The exam F group does have quirk strengthening tests already picked out and the equipment to do them for the full week during the day, correct? Oh, yes they do. Anything else? Not right now, thank you. Ronin didn't even bother to look up as he wrote on the papers, going back to his own quiet world. Nezu smiled as he turned back to a now very embarrassed Yukio. Quote. How long? The whole time. They both spoke at the same time, Nezu's grin getting larger at their moment of synchronization. Ronin, however, was barely paying attention to them, still focused on the papers as his mind worked. Quote. That just makes it worse. And funnier. You're 0 for 2 on finding me. Quote. And you've been listening the whole time. No, I'm trying to do something right now but you two have been steadily getting louder. Quote. Sorry. It was fun watching Yukio bounce between the idea of asking him questions and realizing she'd just be annoying him. Unfortunately for Ronin, Nezu already knew he was on Ronin's shit list and had no intention of moving yet, so he'd annoy him. Hey, so some questions. Nezu leaned towards Ken with a large grin across his face, practically bouncing in his seat. No. Too bad, you're not going anywhere and you know it. Sue Tilda, who taught you how to fight? Me. Now shut up or let me take these files home. Opposed to Yukio and Nezu's long answers, Ken cut straight to the point, just like when she tried to get answers out of him. His tone wasn't respectful at all as he dealt with the principle of UA. Nah. Next question. Did you want to ask a few, Ms. Yukio? No, he seems to be working. Too bad for him. Ken, are you in the heroism industry? Sorry, she said it earlier and threw me off. Is a janitor a part of the cooking industry? Vague. I like it. Next question, who are you? Annoyed, and about to throw you out that window. I want to see if you're related to squirrels. Ken nodded towards the nearest window, which wasn't even open. Yukio wasn't sure it could open. Ah yes, squirrels. They can fall from any height safely because of a natural understanding of aerodynamics, using their bodies as a sort of pseudo-parachute. I can assure you I'm not related and would probably die. Lucky me. Indeed. I still don't think you answered the question but I like not flying out windows, so on to the next one. Yukio, ask away. Quote. This seems kind of rude. It is. Immensely. Also, it doubles as the best way to get answers out of him. So go on, ask away. They did seem pretty close despite what Nezu said early, both acting in sync with each other. Nezu seemed to evaluate him highly judging by how casually they treated each other. Quote. What's your relationship with each other? Annoyer and annoyed. Ken didn't even hesitate in his response, and at least he was giving sort of clear answers. The best she'd gotten so far. You said you trained yourself, right? Yes. Quote. Then why'd you try to refer me to learning under someone else? And, for the first time, Ken stopped for just a second. His pencil stopped mid-mark as he glanced once at Nezu, then got back into his work. Because my style of fighting isn't compatible with your quirk. Quirks pair well with different fighting styles, and some styles don't work together. You and I have those styles. A quirk analyst would be able to create a fighting style that paired up well with your quirk, and the Hero Association can easily provide one for you. You don't need me. But what about when I'm not using my quirk? Once again, a small pause. Longer as he listened, slightly turning to look at her. My quirk is very situational, and there are many times when I can't use it. You don't seem to fight with your quirk, so I was wondering if I could learn your fighting style for those times. Now, he was giving her his full attention, placing down the papers as he looked her over. Quote. There are still much better people to learn from than me. Some fighting styles you could use both with and without your quirk. You don't need me. Quirk analysts make a living out of tearing apart quirks and finding the best ways to improve and expand on them, and I'm some guy you met 3 times now. I do not have the qualifications to make a fighting style for you. Except when you did for Kaminari. Shut up, furry fucker, and I have no desire to. I get nothing from it, we both waste our time, and that's the end of it. Ken sorted the papers and stood. That's also the end of this. Here are your papers back, and I'll see myself out. Goodbye. Ken tossed the papers to Nezu and left, picking up his signature umbrella on the way out. Nezu waved goodbye with a big smile as the cloaked man left. Ya know, I think he really likes you. He didn't insult you once. That's got to mean something. Quote. He usually insults everyone. Well, maybe he just insults me every time we see each other. Anyways, Nezu turned to face her again, taking another drink of tea before continuing. I hope that answered most of your questions. He was a lot more responsive than I thought he'd be. But why do you want to fight like he does? I don't think you ever use a sword with your quirk. Use a sword. Yuki was a little taken back by that comment, trying to think through what she knew about Ken. He uses a sword. Quote. Tilda, you've never seen him get serious. What did you see him use? Guns, needles, the spear. Come on, give me details. Quote. Just needles in his hand. She has guns. As in multiple. She didn't even know if the police used more than one gun per officer, and a spear just seemed impractical. And a spear. Ooh boy, does Ken have a lot of weapons. Nezu laughed at the thought but refocused quickly. I think between you and Ken, I'd be more scared of Ken going on a rampage inside UA with just that umbrella. If it's really an umbrella. But you can find out about that later. Yes, Ken practices swordsmanship first and foremost as far as I know. His swordsmanship is his best martial art. I don't know what you've seen, but when he draws that sword. Nezu seemed to lose himself for a moment, smiling widely at a distant memory. Quote. Well, there's no substitute for seeing it in person. I hope you'll be able to see it someday. Nezu hopped up and moved to the window that Ken had threatened to throw him out of not even 5 minutes ago. Yuki rose to join him, the view overlooking the entrance to UAA. Tiny Dot moved on the ground, a cloaked figure walking with an umbrella as if it was a cane. You seem to value him a lot. Yeah. He used to want to be a hero, ya know. What happened? Quote. A lot of people failed him. Hero society failed him. In a roundabout way, I failed him. It's complicated. Does he hate heroes? Yuki remembered how Nezu mentioned that Ken didn't respect heroes, and with how the old man treated the principal of one of the greatest hero schools in the world, it showed. I don't know, I'm not him. Nezu was smiling, but he didn't seem to be talking with the same levity as before. Quote. I hope not. He'd be a great hero, you know. Might even steal your rank now. You don't think he's good enough to get into the top 10? No, he'd surpass the current top 10. When Ken gets serious, he's in a league we thought only one person existed in. Nezu's eyes were fixed on the tiny figure that he praised so much, slowly walking out of his front gates. Quote. I hope he becomes a hero. For society's sake. Quote. For his. Chapter and notes. Yo yigati yo. If I had a nickel every time I said a chapter took too long, I'd own the bank. But here we are with me getting out my pretentiousness, and we should finally see the forest camp next chapter. Next chapter's just gonna be the rest of Midoriya's day because we've done enough setup. I feel like I've said that before, but oh well. Man, I use too much. Big sad. I guess that's the next minor problem I'm going to focus on. As for this chapter, nobody really posted questions for Yukyu to ask, so I just made them up and used the 2 that people posted. It's fun to balance Nezu with Yukyu, since Yukyu's biggest difference out of the 3 characters Ronin usually deals with is ego. Mao, Maruko, and Nezu all have massive egos and aren't afraid to show it, while Yukyu's actually humble and polite. A fun contrast to the usual group. Now, I wanted to rant for about something that might be obvious but one person was still asking about it, and I love putting things in the notes. Ronin being the cause of change in hero society. Midoriya and Ronin are separate things for this argument, but the reason why Ronin is not ideal for changing hero society is that he's not famous. I've already mentioned it, but almost every big event Ronin was ever in has him edited out of the picture by the Hero Association so he never gets credit for anything major. Most people don't know who Ronin is unless they met him. Ronin also is not a natural leader. Could he lead? Yes. But Goku could train a new generation of heroes to defend Earth from the millions of threats it faces, but he doesn't because it's not in character. It's not who he is, and Ronin naturally does not have the skills to lead a change. He's just a guy who's really good at fighting lots of opponents at the same time who's overhyped by a rat who runs a high school. A weird thing you have to deal with when writing fanfic is staying in character. Characters have personalities and as such, rules, attached to them about how you have to write them. They behave and do things in a certain way, and if they don't they're not the same character, like if Aizawa was a happy-go-lucky person it wouldn't really be Aizawa anymore. Same name, same quirk, but a different person. You change almost every character you write. No one can really get a character exactly right, but the rules change over time. Ronin's Midoriya is virtually the opposite of the Sunshiny Canon's Midoriya. He's become darker, more violent, and self-destructive. Pretty generic for a fanfic, I know, but the change wasn't instantaneous. He slowly evolved from the canon to become this mess. Ronin's Midoriya also had some changes from canon before he started to evolve. Ronin's was always a little more bitter, shown by his reaction to beating the sludge villain and how he would have successfully saved Bakugo. Ronin uses his brain more, but this fanfic is focused on him alone and not an entire class. It can show him in more detail, which gives us more time to tamper with his rules. And on a similar note, OCs. I'm not about to say if they're bad or good, but one of the best things about OCs is they have no rules when you start out. You dictate their personalities when you create them, and that leads to the final part of this rant. It's all set up and payoff. Once a character has its rules, you have to follow them. That's how you keep a story believable in the midst of pulling out all these strange and confusing powers. Stories are about characters, so if the characters make sense the rest of the story can branch off of them. I've ranted in circles enough. I'ma go now and hope this chapter wasn't too pretentious while knowing damn well that it was. Adios. Chapter 115. Chapter Summary. The start of the summer camp. It's finally happening, took forever, I know. But hey, better late than never. But what if I stalled more? Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya meandered out of the annoying meeting, walking across Yue's front lawn with his only company being the tapping of the umbrella across the pavement. He didn't expect to see Yukio of all people in there, but he wasn't surprised that Nezu did something like that. Nezu did like pulling twists after all. Still, that was a more enjoyable twist. Yukio was much better to deal with than other professional heroes, like Maruko. As much time as they spent together, he was pretty sure he liked Yukio a little more. She thought things through, she was polite, and she was actively trying to better herself without an outside force's influence. She was a shoo-in for being more liked by them. If he was out of high school he might have proposed when she started talking about learning real fighting techniques to combine with her quirk. Still, he didn't want to help her with that. He couldn't. They had a plan that started tomorrow, and as good as Yukio was, it wasn't shaping well for the heroes before they even went over. Maybe this training camp would change his mind. But it wasn't likely. He was trying to decide which side would be the best to join by looking into their futures, but heroism had such a rocky start it was impossible for him to ignore. It was a hard sell by any stretch, especially compared to the organization and power of villainy. All Might was falling apart and wouldn't be able to keep being a hero in a few years, while All for One looked to be in his 30s like he was aging backward or something. To compare the sides and their strong figures, right now heroism had the top 10 and not much else. Even some of the heroes in the top 10 wouldn't put up much of a fight, and he could probably solo them with the proper equipment. The heroes were together but not united. Compared to that, villainy had All for One, a person who fought All Might and won. He hadn't seemed to win the short game, but long term. All Might was only a hero for 3 hours a day, and All for One looked ready to take on the entire top 10 single-handedly. Hell, from how he was talking about the end of All Might, the number one villain might actually go toe-to-toe with the Hero Association. The fact that Midoriya wasn't sure who would win spoke volumes about that man's power. And that was just one villain. Kurogiri, Stain, Mao, there were tons of powerful criminals on All for One's side. Looking at it from the past, the heroes didn't stand a chance. There might be more heroes, but there were more ants than people in the world and the ants still weren't in charge of shit. Midoriya stopped thinking about the past, shaking those thoughts off with a wistful smile. They already knew heroism had fallen far and was failing. They already knew how this would end too. They just didn't want to admit which side was stronger. The League might be stupid, but they were leagues more competent with Kurogiri along for the ride. Imagine how strong they'd be with Wraith. Midoriya shook off a few more thoughts as he went on his way. He said he'd go and see the future of heroism because he knew how bad it looked. He was going to help UA's best and brightest. Surely, they'd at least set a good example for the heroes. Until he remembered a third of them failed their final exams. A third of a class failing finals. Some of that was down to personal problems, but when so many problems arose you had to question the teaching method. Midoriya couldn't shake that one off because he, on some level, knew it was true. Midoriya knew who was probably going to win this competition after all. He was running a test to see if Bakugo of all people could listen to advice. Bakugo, for God's sake. But he'd hope. But he'd try. And, by his own effort and determination, he'd at least help a few more people. At this point, it was all he could do for them. But for himself, early bedtime for his early wake up. He lay in bed for a minute with his eyes closed, breathing deeply as he savored his bed. Last time in a while he was going to sleep comfortably. Eventually, the sluggish form slipped from the bed and slunk off to the bathroom. Clean up then slink back to sit on the bed for another minute or two, just trying to get focused. His bed was made, the backpack sat by the front door, already double and triple checked. Midoriya was moving now, starting to get a flow. He did his morning routine while breakfast heated up, some stretches and practice swings while the microwave made a light breakfast. That meal was just a memory by the time his mom woke up briefly to see him off. An exchange of hugs, one kiss each, and now he was out of the house. His momentum was good as he ran through the early morning streets to his high school long before anyone sane would show up, making his own entrance inside with Yamato. He went into his second bathroom of the day to check out what he was going to do. At first, he'd been worried about his disguise, but he realized he could just bring a makeup kit on the trip and wake up early. And that brought him to wondering again what weapons to bring, a question he thought of last night while coming home from meeting Nezu. That was what he spent most of the night thinking over, but it wasn't too difficult in the end. His umbrella sword, the pistols, the bodysuit, and the coat were all coming as his staples. Even if he wasn't going to use them all, if things went sour he'd like to have them nearby. Plus a few practice swords for training, something UA probably wasn't going to provide. He was also bringing the helmet because subtlety wasn't his forte, but the helmet was more of a backup. He wasn't planning to wear the usual black dome mask unless something went wrong, but he knew for a fact something was probably going to go wrong. His guess was Maruko would show up and attack, because she always seemed to find a way to cause problems for him. The cloak was coming too, and that meant his staff was coming too. He didn't actually have a name for it when it wasn't in one of the bigger weapon forms, he'd work on that later though. Midoriya stepped back and looked over the back with all his weapons and tools stored nicely away. He had thought of a few last things to get in advance for this, but those went in a separate bag. He'd only be bringing 3, one for his camping equipment, one for his weapons, and the extras. The biggest one was his weapons but the heaviest was his equipment, and that still fit on his back. He carried around the AEC, a few bags shouldn't slow him down at all. After grabbing all his things, it was time to set out. Ken quickly traversed the streets through his secret underground passages, arriving at UA in not even 5 minutes from his high school. He was an hour early, but he was supposed to be one of the supervisors this time. He had to be leading these kids, and that meant he had to be there earlier than any of them. Walking into UA, the bus wasn't even there yet. No one was outside yet, leaving him alone with only his thoughts and some bags as company. He tried the doors, but it didn't seem they were unlocked yet. He could get through them with Yamato, but if they were locked no one was probably inside yet, so it was better to just sit and wait. He sat down on the ground, crossing his legs and closing his eyes. If he had to wait, he might as well get some more meditation in. Plus, he was feeling pretty tired. He'd probably be getting a little sleep in on the bus ride. He straightened his back and took a deep breath in, letting the time wash over as he zoned out. And the bus will be here in 30 minutes. Hopefully some of the students will be here by then, because we're only loading for 15 minutes. Midoriya stirred to that voice, somewhat familiar and tired. He felt like he'd heard it before, but it had definitely been a while. You're not going to leave your class here if they're late again, are you? This is supposed to be for the students Eraserhead. A new voice, he definitely hadn't heard that one before. If he had, he wasn't paying attention to it. Midoriya stopped focusing internally and checked the sun. He hadn't even been meditating for 20 minutes yet, and people arrived. Still, that was probably for the best. He wasn't here to get more sleep after all. He took one last deep breath in and jumped to his feet straight out of meditation, then stretched his legs. Sitting on the ground wasn't his best idea for any amount of time. Besides himself, there were only 2 people out in front of you, a big guy in red with tubes, that was Vlad King. They had been in the same place at the same time only. Once, if even, they definitely never spoke to each other before this. The other guy was Eraserhead, and that made him double-check his pocket sandwich he still had. I'll only leave them if they don't show the necessary potential to be heroes, like the ability to read a clock, and it looks like the last teacher's here. I'm Aizawa, this is Khan. You are. Ken, it's a pleasure. They all exchanged handshakes, a little awkwardly. Did Nezu change anything last minute again? See Vlad, the new guy's already asking more useful questions than you. Eraserhead flipped open the schedule, giving it a quick reread. Don't think so, we're dumping the kids off at 9 and going to meet them at the camp at 12, meal, then we start training until 8, meal and finish with hot spring. Good. Midoriya had plans based around the schedule, and if it suddenly changed his plans would have to be reworked, so he was really hoping a certain furry fucker didn't stick his nose in anywhere. I'm glad you think so, Ken. Hello everybody. Nezu hopped out of UA's front doors with a big grin plastered across his face. Nezu. Everyone spoke at once with all the enthusiasm of the dead, glaring at the principal with suspicion. Not one hello. Such a cold greeting for such a hot day. Nezu laughed it off but jumped between them, giving each of them the once-over. Aizawa, did you sleep at all for this? We need you on your highest alert this week. Don't worry sir, I'm ready for anything. Eraserhead looked like he was ready to keel over at any moment from sleep deprivation. Really filled Midoriya with confidence about the professional teachers he was stuck with. And Khan, did all the supplies come in nicely? No complications I assume? No sir, everything's ready to go. All that's left is the students. Fantastic. And Ken, aren't you hot in that bodysuit and a jacket? It's already 21 degrees out and it's only going to get hotter. But somehow, by the grace of God, I go on. Did you need to tell us something? Yup, just a few last things. Won't take a minute. Nezu casually hopped on top of Midoriya's pile of bags so the 3 teachers could see him better. Remember that we have reports of strange seismic activity in the area. It might just have been a misreading of the information, but scientists can't explain it, so it's probably someone with a quirk. We still don't know who it was or why they did it, so keep your eyes open for the first sign of trouble. Also, remember to try and be a little positive with the students. They're still in their first years after all and are still getting to grips with their quirks, Aizawa, so patience is necessary. Lastly, this is a summer camp. Try to enjoy yourselves a little. Also, on an unrelated note, here are your papers, Ken. Couldn't think of a good time to give them to you. Any questions? Nezu tossed a very familiar folder to the vigilante who ran through it quickly to make sure everything was still in place. When you say keep an eye out, should we be patrolling the area? Nothing of the sort. The area has already been segmented off and so you should know well in advance if anyone stumbles in, but just keep an eye on the students to make sure no one goes missing. You're going to a big forest and it might be a little hard to keep track of everyone. Midoriya pulled out some new papers that finally gave him details about where they were all going, like a map and a real schedule with hard times. He wouldn't need to make any minor changes, it just told him how long he'd be spending with certain idiots. Exam F has worked to improve their quirks, right? Do you just want me to take them away from my stuff one by one or do all of them at once? If you see fit you can have them never do any work on their quirks for the whole week. Run it as you please, Ken. Midoriya nodded, knowing damn well he wasn't going to spend a full day with most of them. I understand, thank you for the clarification. Ah, here come some of the students. He wanted to say here come some of the kids but his brain couldn't get used to saying that. He was pretty sure he was younger than the kids in their classes, which really outlined how little he thought he was going to teach them. No one else really paid attention to the first students arriving, some kids from 1A. A blue-haired idiot who tried to take on a hero killer, a girl with a giant ponytail, and a guy who was literally split down the middle. He was pretty sure the half-and-half guy was Endeavor's kid, and anything beyond that was lost on him. The kids were discussing well, the blue-haired kid with glasses and the ponytail girl were discussing their expectations for the summer camp while the mayo ketchup guy was brooding in the back of the group. Sensei, we have arrived. Blue Boy pointed out the obvious while making chopping motions like some sort of robot. By the way he spoke in his quirk, engine legs, he might just be one. Yeah, I noticed. The bus will be here soon. Don't lose your stuff while we wait. Yes sir. Robokid went back to talking to Ponytail while the edgy kid sat back and shunned all social interaction. None of them were on his list for problems he had to deal with at least, so Midoriya didn't bother paying too much attention to them. Instead of focusing on them, he watched the other teachers. They were supposed to be the experts here, and as more of their students came in they stopped standing around talking and started running checks with their respective classes. Some of the students, presumably the class representatives, helped their teachers as more students trickled in while the bus slowly crept in. Midoriya stayed back from the groups, checking off the students he'd be teaching as they came in before someone came running up to meet him. Hey, Sensei. Kaminari emerged from the blob of mediocrity that was 1A with a big smile on his face, waving ecstatically at him. Sensei, you're gonna come along and teach us? Hello, Kaminari. Yes, in a way, I'm gonna teach you. Excited for this trip. It was good to see the only person who bothered to take his advice, even if this was probably the last time they'd see each other for a long time. Totally dude. I mean sir. Midoriya laughed it off and picked up his bags, smiling at Kaminari. You can just call me Ken, Kaminari. We're both coming to learn, you're just going to be learning from me. He was pretty sure Kaminari was like a month older than him, and hearing the taller student call him sir, was surreal and pointless. Whoa Tilda, you're already talking with the vague mystic stuff. That was fast. Midoriya wasn't sure what that meant, but just smiled and nodded along. Speaking of fast, you better start loading your bags or else we might leave without you. Plus, don't you want a good seat? Oh, you right. Gotta go. Kaminari left as quickly as he got, dragging his backpack behind him. It seemed a little overstuffed, but gave Midoriya an idea of one thing he could request. He scanned the crowd for a certain rat so he could request a few spare items for the training, something that it seemed that furry fucker hadn't thought to bring. Everything got loaded up quickly onto 2 buses, and everyone got sorted onto their own bus. 1A with 1A, 1B with 1B. Midoriya was with 1A since all of his students were in that class, and because Kaminari asked him to. Personally, if Kaminari hadn't said anything, Midoriya would have gone with 1B just because he knew literally nothing about them. Well, and because he wouldn't have to do anything if he went with 1B. All of these students didn't care about him, all except one, a certain very excitable student who seemed very happy to talk to Midoriya again. You update your outfit. Looks pretty slick. Midoriya was pretty sure his outfit looked bland as hell. It was only designed to be functional after all. Have you updated your gear? It takes regular maintenance and work to keep our gear in working order and top shape. Midoriya held up Yamato to show what he was talking about, slightly unsheathing the sword when Kaminari didn't understand. Oh. I get you. Oh, no, I haven't. My bad. Kaminari rubbed the back of his head, trying to hide his emotions behind a smile. If Midoriya had to guess, Kaminari was upset that he kept regularly losing. Kaminari lost the sports festival, had notes about his lackluster grades, and judging by how he was a part of Midoriya's exam F, he didn't do so hot on his finals either. Quote. Then I guess I can show you how when we get there. It should be a pleasant time. Midoriya mimicked his mother's calm smile as he leaned back into his chair, getting comfortable as the bus started. You will. Kaminari's smile became a touch more genuine and he laughed, reminding the vigilante of a certain loud criminal. Thanks. Hey, you know what we're gonna do this week? I hope so. I am the third teacher after all. Whoa, are you gonna teach all of us? In theory. Quote. Is that a yes or no? Probably just going to teach you again. Sweet. Thanks man. Kaminari leaned back in his chair, then started talking again. Cause I've been on a bad streak since we last met, and I think I could use some serious help. Lots of mistakes. Tons Manser Mr. Ken, I don't think I can call you just Ken dude. Whatever comes naturally then, my name doesn't matter as long as I can figure out you're talking about me. Midoriya realized he didn't talk to that many people his age. In his current social group, there was Eiko, and then Maruko was like 10 years older than him and Yuki was pretty close to her age, and he was pretty sure those two were the next closest after Eiko. That was a pretty big gap. At least Kaminari didn't let him think too deeply about the issues, popping back in and talking more. Midoriya was content to sit back and act as a sounding board while Kaminari let loose for a few more minutes before going off to join his friends. The loud, high-energy life suited Kaminari, and while Midoriya was happy to interact with it, it wasn't for him. He was content to lean back in his seat, close his eyes, and let the world wash over him as their bus made its way down the road. Chapter and notes. Yagati yo. Not a long chapter, but I've got a headache and this is what I wrote. Time for some short notes for a short chapter. We're finally getting into the summer training camp and there will be some changes, just gonna say that now because I have some gripes with how this was handled in canon. The first of those edits will happen in the next chapter, so I'll ramble about story edits in this one. My big rant about changing story beats is when it's done without thought for why it's happening in this new way compared to how it happened in canon. There's a fanfic I love that changed an event in what at first seemed like a very cool way until I sat back and thought about it. After that, I realized it was a very stupid change from a logical perspective and weakened the overall story for its inclusion. In this story, Class 1A went to the USJ and the League of Villains didn't attack. This wasn't the bad change, it was just a change that existed and not the one I want to complain about. Moving forward, Class 1A started the training exercises and then the League of Villains attacked. This change doesn't seem too bad until you remember the original point of the League's attack, to kill All Might. The reason they attacked immediately in canon was because they wanted to surprise everyone and get the jump on him. If they didn't attack immediately, they'd see All Might wasn't there and call off the attack because it's physically impossible to achieve their objective. Shigaraki even only gets pissed off when he finds out that All Might isn't there, because that's the moment that he realizes their attack physically can't succeed. No one cares about this in the fanfics otherwise pretty good, but by changing that story beat the League now comes off as stupid. They waited for Class 1A to start the training exercises but couldn't be asked to do a head count for a big guy with bunny ears for hair. Now they come off as both lazy because they didn't bother to check incompetent because you can't tell me the literal living portal couldn't have just teleported above them and done some basic math and stupid. Probably not the intended ending. To quote my favorite reviewer, you have to master the conventions before you defy them, which I'm gonna be honest I don't expect fanfic writers to master shit when writing. It's a fanfic for God's sake and I'm just really picking and pretentious. However, I will argue from my seat of pretentiousness that you have to understand the original before you can try and change it. The fanfic I'm getting pissy about probably just wanted to show off what they thought the rescue activity was going to be while giving a moment to some characters, but instead weakened some of the canon characters by portraying them as even worse than in the original. Seriously, Shigaraki can already barely form a plan in canon, now he looks even more stupid. Just questioning why bad scenes are a part of the original can reveal some fun details about a work and lead to better improvements. It's through overanalyzing dumb stuff that we can improve and realize why things are dumb to avoid them going forward. In theory. In practice, we make fun of things and then forget it. Oh well, I've got some changes to write next chapter and it's time to make a fool of myself. Adios. Chapter 116, Bus Ride to Training Camp. Chapter Summary. Making my way down forest, walking fast as monsters pass and I'm camp-bound. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya relaxed in his seat on the bus, hearing but not quite listening to the chatter of Class 1A as they moved out of the city and into more open areas. They were a noisy bunch, constantly shouting, laughing, and using their quirks. It was a total mess that Eraserhead, the one who was driving the bus, didn't even bat an eye at. So, instead of paying attention to the carnage of the children, Midoriya pretended to be mature and boredly stared out the window, watching the scenery roll by as the pair of buses left all civilization and went into a vaguely familiar forest. Well, to say it was vaguely familiar was to lie. He remembered this road because it was the same road Mao had taken them back after visiting the abandoned military complex. He couldn't see the base from the road, but he did see the knocked over sign that signified where the trail started as the bus zoomed along. Put together with Nezu's warning about strange seismic activity, and he was pretty sure the heroes really didn't know what was going on, setting up their camp close to their enemy's secret hideout unintentionally. Another point off the heroes and their non-existent ability to find reliable information. This wasn't unusual either, heroes were usually on the back foot because information gathering was a field the current hero society didn't explore. But that was just being negative, and they barely started. The fact that they had barely started and heroism was already losing points wasn't good. Besides, this was about the next generation. Not the past. Mostly not about the past. Still, it was good that the school was putting in so much effort to train its students that it created a camp program just to get a little more time with them. They wouldn't be training for a long time in this camp, but a resourceful student would still make progress no matter what problems came up. Shame then that these students looked to be less resourceful than rats. But now he was being negative again. The least he could do was start with a neutral opinion and then go from there. Midoriya shuffled in his seat, trying to shift away as he refocused on the view out the window. He wasn't used to sitting for long anymore, and it seemed most of the students weren't either. It seemed his short class periods from taking half his classes online were now coming back to bite him in the ass with boredom and listlessness. But as Midoriya stared out the window at the shifting scenes, the buses began to slow down, pulling to a stop along the ledge of a cliff on the side of the road. Aizawa stood up and faced his class, speaking loudly over the hubbub. All right everyone, we're taking a quick break to stretch our legs. Everybody up. It seemed the kids were as excited to walk around as Midoriya was, most rushing past him and out the doors. Midoriya was the second to last person to get off the bus, with only Eraserhead himself coming after. The tired teacher shut the doors behind them as the students spread out on the cliffside. They stopped it, admiring the view as they stretched and talked while everyone ignored the strange car that was already parked at the cliff. Well, most of the students ignored the car. Midoriya had checked the schedule and was pretty sure this is where the volunteering hero group would meet up with their class and start the training camp, but he wasn't sure. He wasn't even sure what hero group agreed to help UA. Since he wasn't sure, he decided to take the laziest and best option and just ask. Hey, Eraserhead, this is where the camp really starts, right? Yup, glad you remember. Gotta give the speech now. Eraserhead grumbled as he began to speak to 1A and 1B, who currently were intermingling like cats and dogs. Eraserhead also confirmed Midoriya's suspicions without directly bringing up what was about to happen. While Midoriya didn't know the exact details, he knew the furry fucker who decided what would happen and had a general idea of what was going on. Midoriya wondered if it was his knowledge of Nezu that made him so aware of what, judging by the other adults' faces, was definitely about to happen. Midoriya figured most of UA had this style of throwing the students in head first, so he was surprised that not one of them saw this coming. Midoriya would have guessed that this happened more, but maybe Eraserhead had control over his students and didn't do as many surprises with them. Hey, sensei, want to take a picture with me? View's pretty good. Kaminari threw an arm over Midoriya's shoulders as he smiled widely, much more excited than when they first met and his nerves were racked by his previous failings. His positivity was pretty contagious as Midoriya smiled too, taking his mind off of UA's confusing policies and inner workings. You don't get out of the city much, do you? Nope, reception sucks and bug bites are annoying. Come on though, I'm already here and my mom made me promise to take pics. Kaminari dragged him over to the ledge, both of them ignoring the professional hero's speech while Kaminari took out his phone. Kaminari didn't realize anything was about to go down, but that would just be one more lesson the young hero to be would have to learn. Midoriya kept a confident smile as he was pulled into Kaminari's space. All he had to do was remember to tell Kaminari to save the photo without posting it to social media. This place was supposed to be a secret after all, and he didn't want it given away from such a stupid and preventable mistake. Besides that, one photo couldn't hurt. Aizawa broke off his conversation with Ken and turned to face the messes of 1A and 1B, who had just started the trip and were already wasting his time. He spoke up, not really caring how many's attention he got. They'd get the message in a minute. There's no point in stopping randomly. Mineta glanced up at him with extremely worried eyes. Like for the bathroom. The car that none of the students had noticed finally opened up, with the two heroes stepping out and up. Hey, Eraser, Vlad. He bowed to them as they got into formation for their opening bit. He had to respect the commitment to the bit, even if the concept was pretty fucking stupid in the eyes of an underground hero. So, instead he went for something neutral. He was representing UA after all. Long time no see. Mandalay and Pixie Bob went into their bit with the weird opening and he zoned out, going to stand next to Vlad. Did you lock your doors or just shut them? Shut them, why would I need to lock them? Some of these kids are pretty fast. We'll have to launch them pretty quickly then. The Pussycats finished with their dramatic two-person pose version and Aizawa had to continue his speech again, to explain to the kids who these crazy people were and the fact that they were not crazy. These are the pro heroes who will be working with us during the summer camp, the Pussycats. They're a 4-person team of rescue heroes. Vlad stepped up and filled in some of the background information for the students. They specialize in rescuing people on mountains like this one. We own this entire stretch of land here. Mandalay stepped up to finish this info dump, pointing down the forested mountain towards the rescue base that couldn't be seen. You will all be staying at the foot of the mountain. So far, the classes spoke unanimously about the most obvious shit. Aizawa and Vlad shifted positions to body block anyone who'd try to get back on the buses as the gears inside the students' heads began to turn very slowly, sure, but at least they were turning. Uraraka spoke up first, still saying the obvious. At least she was asking when questions. Then why did we stop here? Could these mean? Suyu took a crack next as their heads slowly figured it out. This wasn't rocket science after all. Why don't we get back to the buses? Someone from 1B said that as the people who were in denial nervously laughed, almost everyone starting to slowly step back. It's 9:30 a.m. now. Mandalay was actually rubbing her hands together as she spoke, like she took lessons from Nezu. Just the thought of Nezu made Aizawa feel a little bad for them, but this was UA. This was pretty standard stuff for dealing with Nezu. If you're fast, maybe around noon. No way, guys. Kirishima tried to rally the students. Make a break for it. One of the 1B students he didn't bother to remember shouted as they all started to run back towards the buses. Kiddies who don't make it to the base by 12:30 won't get any lunch. Mandalay called out as the students ran in fear from her in the ledge, all except 2 figures, who were hanging back by the railing. Sorry students, but the training camp. Vlad spoke loudly and clearly as Pixie Bob leapt in front of the rushing students with a sadistic smile. Aizawa noticed 2 figures standing side by side at the railing, wondering for a momentum who wasn't running as he squinted at the 2 figures before realizing suddenly. Has already begun. Pixie Bob drove her hands into the ground, literally as her hands were briefly swallowed up by liquid dirt before it exploded outward, sending everyone in front of her over the railing and into the air. Everyone and anyone in front of her, student or not. Aizawa squinted at the figures flying through the air as the students continued to shout the most obvious shit. What is this? The ground is rising up. I don't think this is safe. Seriously, these guys were professionals at saying things that literally anyone could have seen. But none of them seemed to notice that there were 41 people flying through the air out of 2 classes of 20. Nobody including the other heroes. The Pussycats might only recognize the teachers from UA and Vlad wasn't used to having an extra set of hands around, because that set of extra hands had been riding with Aizawa. But out of all the people who got flung through the air, only one landed with what could be considered style as he rolled out of the fall, spreading out the impact while safely landing. Most of the students crashed to the ground with a few students who were used to flying through the air landing a little more gently before Mandalay moved to the railing to shout the last of the group's encouragement and tell them what they were actually supposed to be doing. Hey, since it's private land, you can use your quirks as much as you wish. You have 3 hours. Come to the facility on your own 2 feet. As opposed to what, crawling there? Was everyone feeling like pointing out the obvious today? Did he miss some sort of memo or something? After getting through the Beast's Forest. What? Huh? What's that? Beast's Forest. That name was the cheesiest and dumbest thing Aizawa heard all day, and he listened to Nezu this morning. Someone topping Nezu was seriously impressive. It's no use complaining, Kirishima said as he dusted himself off and stood, rallying the others again like he did when trying to get the others to the bus. We just have to go. The students began to move forward just a few feet before they stopped with more overly dramatic screaming at the first hurdle, a giant rock dog thing that emerged slowly from the forest and attacked them. Already they were falling apart, and they hadn't even gone into the forest. Aizawa approached the ridge next to Mandalay, looking over a sea of stupidity as he leaned on the wooden guardrails. Mandalay dropped the Nezu act finally and started acting like a normal human being. It's a really crazy schedule though, Eraser. We're trying to cram in what they'd get in the first part of their second year before their second semester even starts formally. Nezu made this, so of course it's going to be crazy. Looking down, he could spot the exact moments in each student's head when they realized that the rock dog was in their way and that they were allowed to use their quirks. Permits for quirk use in emergency situations, provisional licenses that let them act as heroes. With villains being so active right now, they need to learn how to defend themselves. To back up his point, a pillar of ice encased the dog's leg while an explosion bit into it, the most active students going straight on the offensive. These students encouraged the others to follow suit, all of them slowly shifting to the offensive. All of the students except one, who was still getting untangled and talking to the only person down there who wasn't a student. Aizawa stepped back from the ledge and faced the ecstatic Pixie Bob. Good job on keeping the guardrail intact, I was worried you might break it. I'd say you have good precision, but... Thanks. My first standing on end, I'm so excited. Pixie Bob was so into playing with the students through the dirt dogs that she didn't immediately catch the problem, with her attention divided. She wasn't used to this, which is why she probably made such a rookie mistake. Wait, what's wrong? Did you know we're supposed to have a teaching assistant? The second he said it, Vlad figured it out. Not just you guys either. Nezu got someone to come out of retirement or something to come help us. Is he? Vlad ran to the edge, while Aizawa just turned slightly to look back down at the 41st person on the bottom of the cliff. Yup, looks fine, better than the students anyways. Now all of the heroes were paying attention and actively counting the students, all noticing the now obvious extra. Only one person wasn't wearing the UA school uniform, but because he had been by the ledge and was short he had been hidden by the crowd and been completely overlooked. Oh no, Mandalay bowed to them, clearly embarrassed. I am so sorry. I'll get him right up. Pixie Bob was about to lift him up but was stopped by Aizawa. Now hold on. If that man is who I think he is, you better hope he's exhausted next time he sees you. Aizawa locked eyes with her. For your sake. Plus, it's a good time to see what the old man's capable of. I want to see how good he really is, and this is the perfect chance to find out. Quote. You just want to see what he can do, don't you? Vlad hit it in one. Aizawa didn't really know what their helper would do to Pixie Bob, but this was a good chance to find out who he was and how skilled he really was. I've got a sinking feeling that I know who he is. Aizawa remembered how Kaminari treated the tag-along and what he called him. Kaminari didn't even call Azui-sensei, so that left one person, someone only Nezu was crazy enough to call in. And if Ken is who I think he is. Aizawa definitely took a little pleasure in this as his eyes locked onto Pixie Bob, wondering if she was really gullible enough to believe him. He didn't care. Still would be funny. You better hope he's not. Well, I've got to drive this bus down to the camp now. Good luck on stopping him from getting to the base. Aizawa waved goodbye lazily as he walked back towards his bus. Come on Vlad, let's go. Someone has to start digging that grave. Who is the extra teacher? How bad is he? Don't just leave, damn it. Pixie Bob looked worriedly between the two figures on the ground below and the leaving teacher. Eraserhead. 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 1 second Midoriya was standing next to Kaminari, noticing how everyone else was running away from something. He hadn't been paying attention, someone had been talking but he and Kaminari had been talking over it all. The next second, the ground exploded, he was in the air, and everyone was screaming. He stopped paying attention for one, just zoned out for 1 minute, and now he had no idea what was going on. And that was where Wraith took over. The ground had launched everyone off the cliff, and judging by the available people nearby, it seemed to not be one of the students. A quick glance as they reached their peak of height showed him that it was one of the volunteer heroes, Pixie Bob, with her quirk Earth Flow. Finally, all that useless hero information the weakling had been stacking up was coming in handy. 1 second. That meant this was semi-intentional for the students. He was probably caught in this mess because he wasn't paying attention and he was so short that no one noticed where he was. Still didn't excuse it, but it explained how it happened. They failed to pay attention to their targets and notice him while he failed to pay attention to his surroundings and got caught in the blast. No one was really at fault. But if he could use this as an excuse to give Nezu shit the next time he saw that furry fucker, he definitely would. In the meantime, he was still in hang time and coming out very soon as the ground began to speed towards him. This wasn't safe at all and very poorly thought out. 2 seconds. But, that was what he trained for. He didn't spend all those hours at the parkour gym just so he could flip dramatically. He took in the last of his surroundings, like how Kaminari was still clinging to him on reflex and how the ground was smoothed out and softened by Pixie Bob for a safer landing than normal, and adjusted as his logic and body paired together. 3 seconds in the air. The man breathed out and then grabbed Kaminari, pulling him close to brace for the landing. Tuck in your chin and brace. Kaminari might have said something in response, but the man didn't hear it. They were still close enough to the cliff face to touch it once before impact, so the man spun his body midair so both legs faced the cliffside, jumping upward and away from the cliff so he could have enough momentum to jump out of the fall while lessening the final impact. They sailed through the air for a second longer than most of the students, with the man locking eyes one last time to give the final brief instructions. I'm letting go. Roll and you'll be fine. They had been in the air for 4 seconds and had not even a full second left before impact. Are you sure? They spun through the air, hitting the ground first with the man's right shoulder and flipping him upside down. He was rolling safely away from the cliff now and let go of Kaminari, pushing the boy away so they wouldn't crash into each other and cause preventable damage. The man rolled 3 more times before flipping to his feet elegantly, stretching his body from the impact before turning to check on his former student. Are you alright, Kaminari? There was more talking in the background, but Midoriya didn't pay attention to his as Kaminari slowly got to his feet and steadied himself. Yeah, I think I'm alright, just a little woozy. Midoriya checked his umbrella, which he had to do all of that with for damage, finding it clean as a whistle and safe. He let out a little sigh of relief, then refocused up at the other teachers. You have 3 hours. Come to the facility on your own 2 feet. After getting through the Beast's Forest. Facility? What facility? And what's the Beast's Forest? Kaminari looked around confused, and since they were now stuck together, Midoriya felt the urge to help the student out. The campgrounds, if I'm not mistaken. We're going through the forest, it seems. Midoriya was told a rough idea of where the camp would be, at the base of some mountain. He didn't know the exact details of anything, like why the forest had such a ridiculous name. It seemed like something a child would make up during a game of pretend and the name picked out by professional heroes. But as Midoriya hung back with Kaminari to make sure he was alright, the name became more self-fulfilling as a giant wolf with stony skin charged from between the trees and trampled towards the closest students, attacking wildly to try and crush everything in its way. The half-and-half kid wasted the first attack by only freezing one of its legs, which did at least stop its advance as Robo could jump through the air and kick it once, his leg tearing through the stone somehow as Bitugo snuck in and blew it to hell, missing its giant head somehow and having to fly back around to finish it with a second hit. Did none of these kids know to go for the head? That wasn't even a rule of fighting, it was the paper that the rules of fighting were written on. The students rallied and cheered despite the messy handling of the 3 students, not paying attention as more wolves formed from the ground. Ah. Miss Pixie Bob seems to be doing this. Interesting use of her quirk. Kaminari followed Midoriya's gaze and also saw the wolves forming. What? They're literally crawling from the woodwork. That's cheating. Is it? Kaminari, do you remember the rules of this exercise? Is it? Kaminari, do you remember the rules of this exercise? Ken spoke with a small smile and a confident stance. That phrase brought back memories of the last time Kaminari had trained with Ken for a week, when he'd get frustrated by a task and then realize he lost sight of the end result. When he'd lost sight of the end or when he didn't understand the point of something they were doing, Ken had encouraged him to ask questions like, what is this supposed to do? And what am I supposed to do? By focusing on those points, he could usually piece together the correct ending. It just took a second. Worse though, Kaminari hadn't been doing it. They just started the camp, and already Kaminari was relearning helpful shit. But he should probably respond to his sensei's question. I don't know, I kind of missed the orientation and only heard the last bit. We gotta get to the camp through this forest, right? Yes, good memory. You so far have a good grasp of the basics, but things are about to get a little complicated. Ken nodded to the rest of the group, who was charging ahead as they fought the wolves and left the duo standing in the back. Even the timidest students didn't notice the pair as they tried to stay with the group for safety. Kaminari, what are they doing? They're fighting the weird wolves, right? He didn't say it with complete confidence because he didn't fully understand where this was going. Until he remembered the next portion of Ken's exercise. First question what you're doing, second why you're doing it wait. We don't need to fight the wolves. Now Ken was nodding and smiling, encouraging him to go on. This is just a quest in a video game. We gotta get to the end of the zone like it's Super Mario, and the wolves are just some Goombas in the way. They're wasting time killing every enemy, but there aren't extra points. Now Ken smiled fully, laughing. Excellent thinking, Kaminari. Excellent. I knew you had it in you. All it takes is a second to slow down and think. Don't be afraid to take your time when faced with a problem. Whoa, was this whole exercise just for him so he could practice this? Seriously. Dude, dude, you're the best. Me, the best. I just stood here while you figured everything out, Kaminari. Ken laughed deeply, then patted his student on the back. With a little luck, I'll be standing back the whole week while you keep advancing. Kaminari took one last moment to look at the class who was engaged in a giant battle with the stone monsters, which on a second glance were way more than just wolves. Ogres, dragons, the whole video game ensemble was there. Man, somebody's a game nerd to make all this. All of this is from Dragon Quest. And someone else is a game nerd to recognize it. Ken lightly chastised him, bumping him with his elbow. It seems you classmates are trying to take the shortest way down the mountain but are running into a little difficulty. Yeah, this is like Pokemon, right? Kaminari was thinking now, looking at all of the monsters. A route might be pretty short, but if it's full of tall grass it'll be super slow cause you'll keep getting into fights. The faster routes are the ones with no obstacles. See, aren't you feeling silly for being worried earlier? You're killing it and we've been standing for only 1 minute. Ken started back up the cliffside at the other teachers, giving off a strangely cold vibe for a second as he stared down one of the pros, the blue one with the blonde hair. All of the teachers were standing by the ledge now looking at each other, but Ken didn't raise his voice to communicate with them. We only have 3 hours to go 3 miles. You take the lead. Righto. Kaminari went to grab his sword on instinct, a staple for when he performed parkour, but he couldn't find it. That sword wasn't a part of his school outfit after all. But now Kaminari remembered the words of his mentor, it's fine not to be prepared, but it's not fine to pretend that you are. Stop trying to do backflips while drinking water, Kaminari, and you can't do a backflip normally yet. He wasn't sure how relevant the last part was, but it was the message that mattered. Sir, I don't have my sword. Quote. Kaminari, it's parkour. You don't use a sword for parkour. Yeah, but I'm used to it. Quote. Tell ya what, we go for 10 minutes. You think you still need the sword, I'll let you use mine. Ken smiled confidently and led him forward, removing the weird umbrella cover from his katana and putting it on his hip, tying it off and pocketing the cover all without breaking stride, only stopping to gesture forward to Kaminari. Lead the way. Really? Kaminari smiled as wide as he could, then looked through the woods, remembering what his master said. There were so many ways through the forest, so many paths, and he wasn't even sure of where they were supposed to end up. Quote. To the bottom of the mountain, right? Yup, we should hit a road if we're too far off to the left side. Ken gave one last glance backward as he took off his hat, also putting it somewhere under his big coat as they entered the forest properly. His sleeves rolled up to show the large bracers that covered his forearms and hands, then did the same for his pants. Remember that you can take your time. Yeah, I got it. I think I got it. Kaminari squinted as he picked the paths, remembering his training on the garbage patches on beaches. He didn't stop training, but the ground in the forest seemed way worse than the stuff he trained on. Quote. I'm here to improve though, so difficult isn't bad. Plus, those dogs come from the ground, so I want rocky and not dirty. Dirty as in a lot of dirt, not dirt as in. Don't worry, I'm following. Ken opened up the jacket to show off that badass suit with the muscle pattern and removed something from his right hip, a compacted version of his mask. Kaminari didn't even know that his mask could get compact until now, as Ronin unfolded or stretched or whatever magic stuff he did to make it full size. So, you want rocks on the path. And trees to stop the monsters from coming up. Kaminari scanned the scene again, then pointed. Like that way. A long messy trail of rock clumps and trees stretched and snaked ahead of them, leading slightly to the left so they could have the safety net of hitting the road if they missed the camp and went too far. It didn't seem to be the fastest route but it was definitely the hardest for them to get jumped by those monsters. Are you sure? If I'm not, who cares? I can always come back and change my mind. Ken nodded, smiling, and opened the mask. It slipped neatly over the older man's head and snapped in place, locking in as his teacher no. His master took a few steps forward, rolling his head. Excellent thinking. Are you ready to try? I am ready to learn, sir. Quote. Hey. Ronin faced him one last time, both getting into the position for thunderclap and flash in a heartbeat. There were no words spoken, they didn't need them anymore. Just one last joke. See you at the bottom. I'll be there in a flash. And with that, they were gone. Chapter end notes. Yo yiggity child eating yo. I found where all my passion for this fanfic went, it was with Kaminari the whole time. Probably one of my favorite arcs I've ever written because my other favorite arc happens in the middle of it. Big sad. I just got stabbed in the arm in the name of medicine so I don't get sick, which is good but also means I don't want to do any real work. And that means more writing. Man, this chapter really is a return to the start of this fanfic's roots. Is this entire end section just going to be payoff? Enough of that though, we've got changes to identify. The first one is a really minor thing that no one cares about, bus drivers. Canon had bus drivers that went to and from the camp but this place is supposed to be known by only the necessary people. The easiest way to do this is to have the teachers drive the buses, plus they keep the buses on site in case of emergency. You do risk someone tracking the bus, but they specifically are focusing on as few people as possible knowing the location of this place as possible. So the bus drivers got deleted, rip them. Second, why was 1B not part of this exercise? I couldn't find a reason, so I assume they fell into a black hole. Man, sucks not being the class with the main character in it. They're there now, they exist, and they've also been there since the first day. Just wanted to put that in there. The reason I think they weren't included was so the audience could focus more on the info dump from the teachers about what the training camp was going to be like. That way the audience's attention isn't spread thin focusing on multiple things and can just dial into one thing at a time. Third, the point of the exercise. I assure you that it wasn't the intended solution but it's totally viable according to the Japanese subtitles of the anime. I'm not checking the dub or manga, I'm only going to watch a scene in one version and stick with that. I try to follow the dialogue from the Japanese version because that's the one I follow. I'm lazy like that. The exercise was just kind of dumb though. It said nowhere in the original they had to fight anything, it was just implied in what everyone did because the first students decided to attack instead of running away. It also says a lot about heroes that their first instinct, when faced with a dangerous situation, is to attack, something that Ronin will make fun of next chapter. Also, that the pro heroes not only expected but basically encouraged it. Whack. Know what else is whack? The crowbarring of Midoriya into this part of the test. It's a little cheesy, but Midoriya is one of the shortest guys in the class if I remember correctly, and that's just 1A. Throw in 1B and he got completely lost to the other teachers. Plus the noise and being focused on the wrong thing and he never stood a chance. I'm ranting now, but I'll rant more. Man, I know no one cares but I'm glad to have stuff to rant about again. I'm glad to have Kaminari back again. I'ma be honest, I don't care if anyone else enjoyed this one, I had fun with it. Adios suckers, till my next shitpost. Chapter 117. Chapter summary. Midoriya and Kaminari going Zoom. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Most of Class 1A and 1B advanced slowly through the woods, slugging through fight after fight. The two classes combined their efforts and regularly switched out who was fighting to ensure that they didn't get tired as quickly, each fight against the stone monsters taking longer and longer as they slowly got more and more tired. Even just fighting two of these monsters was an effort as the group worked together to slowly bring down the giants. And, 50 meters to their left, a giant dragon roared as it charged two blurs. The yellow blur took the safer option, jumping to the left at the last moment to avoid the attack. The yellow blur moved far from the body to safely avoid flying limbs at the cost of speed. The gray streak ran over the dragon, bounding off the ground and bouncing off its head before running the entire length of its body in moments, then continuing straight on down the mountain, dancing straight through the danger so it didn't lose any speed. This put the gray figure in the lead ahead of the yellow one, but as another stone monster formed out of the ground, yellow began to catch up by jumping off of the stones and trees in their path, using them like starting blocks to build up explosive short bursts of speed. He carried these bursts of speed straight into the new monster, jumping off a tree and stomping on the newly forming dragon's head before kicking off it to get another burst of speed, mimicking his master. The gray streak now trailed just behind the yellow one, reaching the monster a second slower and skirting around it as the yellow one did last time. Instead of giving the dragon a wide berth though, Gray stuck as close as possible while dodging the outstretched claws and swinging tail without breaking stride. That gray figure jumped onto and off of the limbs, now imitating the yellow as it turned all of these hurdles in its way into speed boosts. Both blurs returned side by side as they ran, dodging trees and incoming rocks as they rapidly descended the mountain. How long can you run for master? Long enough. The yellow leapt over a fallen log while the gray slid underneath it, both then bouncing back to their full run. You're not using your quirk. Why? I can't just start W hoops. Kaminari slowed for a second as the seventh monster formed in front of them. While 1A and 1B had to actually kill their monsters before new ones spawned in, it seemed like Pixie Bob was just giving up control of their monster if they got too far from it and creating a new one. It made sense, an object as big as these monsters could never keep up with the speeds they were putting out. Kaminari did slow down, but he still wasn't going slow by any means. The new monster, a giant snake, didn't have any limbs, so if you ran past the first attack you were pretty solid. All you had to dodge was the head, and what better way to dodge than by attacking the head? Kaminari slowed from a full run as he hopped up on a rock, then jumped onto a branch, pushing off and diving straight for the snake's head. The snake tried to avoid the suicidal tactic and gave Kaminari a free ticket straight past the big thing as he rolled out of his own jump and started running again, stumbling for a few steps before going back into his breakneck pace while moving his shoulder. Ow ow ow, not a good landing. Ow, how do you keep pulling this stuff off? The snake's head followed Kaminari's motions right until Ronin bounced off its head, driving its head into the ground while he continued his run towards the base of the mountain. Same as everything else. So, practice. Whoa, these monsters are getting bigger. The new monster was already forming ahead of them. Pixie Bob wasn't going to give them an easy break. You never said why you're not using your quirk. Ronin snuck that one in while he took the lead towards the new monster, a giant turtle-looking thing that blocked their entire path. It looked like they have to get around it. I can't start that in the middle of a run. I gotta be standing still for that. Takes, like, 20 seconds to cover my legs. That explained why Kaminari had only used Thunderstorm and Crash after the 30-second break. He couldn't start it on a dime, much like his learning method. Kaminari really was at his best when he had prep time. Quote. Sensei, I've got a question. What's up, Kaminari? Kaminari realized their situation and used his brain again. Kaminari might just be figuring out obvious things, but in the heat of the moment what seemed obvious was usually overlooked. Can you stall that thing? I'm out of breath. Kaminari knew he hit his limits. A good thing to know, and he relied on his partner to cover when he was weak. You said you've got the energy to keep running, but I need a minute. Understandable, I'll buy you 1 minute. Need food. Kaminari slowed to a stop as Ronin charged the giant monster on his own. Yes, you're my hero, man. Ronin threw back some food without glancing, then shifted into fighting mode. Wraith smiled beneath the mask, finally having some solid parameters to work in. Fight for 1 minute while protecting his partner. Those were some rules he could understand and work with. His full charge slowed as his left hand grabbed Yamato's sheath, his thumb pressing against the Tsuba and his finger on the sheath's trigger. His right arm continued to swing to build momentum as he charged, only slowly for a moment to build up into a full sprint. Thunder breathing, first form revised. Ahead of him the giant turtle widened its stance, snarling and preparing for a head-on assault. It thought there would be an exchange of blows. Idiotic. This would only take one strike. Thunderclap. Wraith's right arm swung across his body, grabbing the sword's handle and pulling right as his trigger finger pulled, launching Yamato out as his body twisted. He charged the turtle head-on, Yamato hitting it straight in the forehead with the first slice. And Wraith ran underneath the turtle's body as Yamato tore the monster in half with one swing, creating a trail of blue smoke as the giant was split down the middle. Bolt. He slid to a stop as the monster slowly fell to either side, the thing's entire body coated with white smoke before seeming to dissolve as the white turned into dozens of smaller cuts, making the turtle collapse in on itself. Ronin finished breathing out as he resheathed Yamato, then rolled his shoulder. You've got 55 seconds to go, Kaminari. Take your time and don't choke on the energy bars. Was MR. Yash SMR. Kaminari shut his hanging mouth and then immediately didn't take his time, shoving one of the energy bars in his mouth as he spoke. You've created a great move with Thunderclap and Bolt. That was the name of the move Kaminari created in Hosu City. Usually, Thunderclap and Flash made the sword attack sideways, but Kaminari edited it so it attacked up and down. Useful for fighting bigger opponents since it didn't just slice their ankles. I'm looking forward to seeing what you've practiced since we last saw each other because your startup seems to have gotten rusty. Yeah, I've been practicing running for a long time but I might have skipped the starting. Kaminari's startups weren't as good as they used to be, but it wasn't a major downgrade. Just a slight loss of technique that they'd refresh on the first day. On the other hand, Kaminari had clearly been putting in the work to improve his endurance. 7 minutes in and they were 1 mile down the mountain. Running for 7 minutes straight, while they might not have been running the fastest in the world, was pretty good for a high school student who wasn't a natural runner. Your endurance has improved a lot. Well done. Kaminari smiled, seeming to be glad that someone noticed the improvement. When they had been training for the week, Kaminari had shown leagues less endurance than Ronin. The reason their final battle was in 10-minute segments was that there was an echo of thunder as he forced his entire body to move at once, surpassing his normal reaction speed. It seemed someone had been practicing while Ronin was away. Izuku took a second to take in what Kaminari could do, amazed by his quirk amazed by his effort before smirking. He hadn't been slacking either, and he promised the kid he'd catch him when he fell. How could he do that if he just stood around staring? Ronin began to run after that golden blur, building up speed as his feet seemed to push the ground away and his muscles pressed down with inhuman strength. The gray streak began to gain on the gold, one moving so quickly it was impossible to make out and the other bounding with such power it rarely needed to touch the ground, leaping from position to position as the two figures chased each other down the mountain, each egged on by the other's speed. The monsters of before were trampled underneath the gray figure as it charged down the mountainside, striking the ground with enough force to crack it. They were split into pieces as the gold blur weaved past them, daring to stay closer and closer to the monsters as his sword cleaved through them, propelled by his insane speed. The two seemed to dance down the mountain, constantly crossing paths before jutting off in separate directions to deal with the new problems in their own way. The golden streak ran circles around problems, using his usually scattered attention to take in an entire scene quickly before picking the route he liked the most, doing whatever suited him the best and making his own path, mimicking the lightning bolt he resembled. The gray would usually trail just behind the gold for moments before going straight for the obstacle. It would fly over some or directly crush others, often running straight into the monsters and trampling them with tackles. The sheer violence left the monsters in the dust like a rampaging demon. They flew down the cliffs, around the trees, and over the small streams. Any monster that crossed their path was lucky to be left in the dust. Right before they reached the end, both figures broke the tree line one last time. Kaminari flew through the air with a huge smile on his face as the sun shone down, spinning backward as he looked over just how far he'd come for a moment before his smile tightened into a sharp grin as he continued to spin, refocusing on what was ahead and redoubling his efforts for the final stretch. Ronin floated for a second as his jump peaked. It had been a good workout and a good time to spend with Kaminari. Kaminari was spinning in the air and flashed a cheesy smile at him before his spin turned him around again. Ronin stared for just a moment at his student, who was still finding ways to have fun in the middle of training and couldn't help smiling himself as they began to sink back below the trees. For all the things he'd seen from heroes, that optimism was possibly the most impressive. Both rolled out of that final jump and took off with full force, clearing the trees with ease and haste as they moved. They hadn't seen any monsters for the last few minutes as they raced to the end, other than the one running beside them that both intended to beat. It was a 40-minute drive down the mountain to hit the camping site, which had been hidden off the main road and was hard to see. Aizawa parked the bus off to the side and out of the way, grabbed his bags, and hopped off the bus to meet up with the other teachers. He met Vlad first, also on his way out of the bus, and together they walked to the office, camp building, whatever you called it, the random building that was in the middle of nowhere. The Pussycats had parked their car already and were inside, with both focusing hard on the students on the mountainside. Everything going well. How close are the students? Vlad got straight to business while Aizawa tried each of the chairs, trying to find the best one possible so he could sleep until everyone arrived. Mostly good. Well, mostly good wasn't all that good, all things considered. Aizawa paid a bit of attention as he debated between two chairs, but he was pretty sure he knew the problem. We've lost sight of that assistant teacher and the student that was with him. They're not on any of the cameras and I might have to go look for them if they don't show up soon. Mandalay tried to explain, but it was difficult to explain when you knew less than the person you were talking to. I hope we don't have to call this off already, it's not even the first day. Quote. How far is it between here and where the student started? Aizawa did some quick math in his head, but he was pretty sure he already knew what happened. He had some inkling of who Ken was just by Kaminari's reaction to the third teacher, plus his moves were vaguely familiar. Roughly 3.5 miles, but that's not counting for how bad the terrain is. Bad terrain wouldn't stop the person he was thinking of, a guy who'd run wherever he pleased whenever he felt like it. If he ran a 9-minute mile he would have gotten there at the same time as them, but he was too athletic to take that long even with these bad conditions. Hopefully they're just out of our sensors in a ditch and we'll find them soon, but... Mandalay, send out a message telling everyone in a Milino to molesto come to this building. That extra teacher will show up soon, don't worry. I've even got an idea where he is. Aizawa settled into the armchair with a big smile, closing his eyes as he sunk in. Ah yeah, he picked right. He was gonna get a great nap in before the students showed up. Quote. Are you sure? He should be here in a few minutes, and he's definitely got Kaminari with him. They like each other a lot. Some minor adjustments and he was already slipping off. He yawned, then looked at the other heroes. Wake me up when the other students get here if something else goes wrong. What? Is he that confident in his students? Mandalay looked towards Vlad, but it was Pixie Bob who answered. To be rude, he shouldn't. They're not giving up, but they're not making good time. They're practically just crawling forward but they've got no injuries. So they're good at fighting at least. Mandalay did at least send out the message to everyone with 2 miles, easily a mile ahead of the students trying to get down the mountainside, but she wasn't sure if that meant if the teacher and student were hidden somewhere close. Did Nezu want any last-minute additions? Besides the guy Pixie threw off a cliff, no, but I'm pretty sure Nezu planned that in advance and just never told Eraser and myself. Vlad stroked his chin and looked through the notes. Did you guys know about him? We knew there was going to be 3 teachers, but I assumed it was going to be ectoplasm. He teaches general studies and they're not doing anything this week, right? Mandalay made light conversation, then quickly checked on Koda. He was in the same room as them, sitting next to Eraserhead and kicking his feet, bored. Yes, and I don't know who this third teacher is. It's the first time I've met him, and he's going to be in charge of half of 1A. That was a little confusing, making Mandalay switch to look at the black blob slumped in one of the armchairs. Why? He's not in charge of half of 1A, Aizawa clarified without opening his eyes. He's in charge of everyone who failed their final exams. It just so happens that 1A's chock full of idiots. If I had my way, Ken would be teaching half the class not gone, Mandalay can because some of those kids did some stupid shit. Oh, how many failed? 7, but a few more should have. Someone who refuses to use half his quirk anytime it gets serious, one who jumped towards a black hole, and... No, that's the major ones. Eraserhead yawned, then sunk back down into the chair. So, all the items for the quirk training arrived last week and most are already set up outside. Mandalay switched topics with a smile, focusing on a more positive tone while Pixie Bob made strange motions and noises in the background as she created and controlled more monsters. You didn't have to do that, we can have the students set those up. Vlad finally got around to choosing his own chair to sit in, then refocused. Do you think we're going to have to make lunch for the students? No way. Pixie finally came back in with confidence. They're not even a quarter of a mile in, they'll be lucky if it's still daytime when they arrive. I hope they do a little better. Vlad looked a little disappointed, probably thinking about what Mandalay said at the beginning. If you're upset because I told them to be here by noon, I was joking. We expected them to be here by around 9:30. You think it's gonna take 12 hours? Nope, probably by 6:30 now. Pixie Bob spoke up again. They're making great time, it just doesn't look like it because they're constantly fighting. Ah, I understand. Everyone in the room had to go through UA's grueling tests and knew how bad an endurance match could be. An endurance match against literally endless foes, though, that felt like a nightmare. I came as quickly as I could be bothered, what's wrong? The third teacher opened the door and peeked inside, then glanced around. Is anything wrong, or did I misunderstand the message? What? Mandalay glanced at the clock. It's 10:04. So it is. Does that mean anything or can I go? Pixie Bob stopped dead, then grabbed the nearest clock and stared between it and him, repeatedly shifting between the two in disbelief. Quote. How'd you get here? You see, I previously rented a jetpack so I wouldn't have to walk anywhere and use that to get down the mountain. The amount of sarcasm coming from the third teacher was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I ran. The trail wasn't even 4 miles and I was running. How did you think I got here? Vlad looked over the third teacher, then got up to look behind him. Standing behind the third teacher was a student wearing an extremely dirty and slightly burnt UA uniform. Quote. Hi, I'm here too. Are we canceling training today because the other students are going to take so long? At the pace they were going it might be dark before they arrive. The third teacher hadn't even been here for their conversation and he was already on the same page as them. Well, maybe a page ahead of them. Quote. Sir, when did you get here? About 20 minutes ago. We took a quick breather then went to the training grounds while we waited for the buses to arrive, then did some warm-ups. We're supposed to train today after we got down the mountain. This man still hadn't stepped in fully to show what he looked like, so it was hard to get the full picture. About that, we're so sorry you got stuck in that. Mandalay stood and bowed to the man who wasn't even fully through the door. It was our fault. You didn't notice me, but I wasn't paying attention. It's everyone's fault, don't waste time worrying about it. No one got hurt, and what really matters is I can blame Nezu for it later. Damn straight. Eraser cheered from the back, the most energetic anyone possibly had heard him in years. I don't believe we formally met before, miss. The third teacher turned for a moment, gesturing his student inside and shutting the door after him, then refocused on Mandalay as he walked inside. I am Ken, I am not a professional hero and I am honored to work with you. Thank you for having me. Ahum, I'm Shino and that's Raiko. Our other 2 members are out right now, but they'll be here soon. As she straightened out, she was surprised to see that Ken was possibly the shortest person in the room, probably around or shorter than even Pixie Bob. From top to bottom, Ken's appearance was best described as strange. He wore large baggy pants that went down to his ankles, a large jacket that was shut tightly, fingerless gloves on each hand, and a bandana over his eyes. The colors were all fairly mundane and uniform with a variety of grays and blacks. He did have a splash of color in the straw hat that he had on him, but he wasn't wearing it at the moment, revealing just how small he really was. Physically, his age was unplaceable if you didn't listen to him talk. His body and face structure suggests something childish, but the scars, graying hair, and tone he spoke with suggested an age beyond his youthful appearance. The longer he talked, the older he seemed. The biggest scar was a strange one on his right eye that transcended his bandana. It looked to be from some kind of knife wound, as there was only one scar line she could see, peeking out from the bottom of the bandana that covered his face. For how weird it looked, the strangest part was how tame it was. Nothing big and flashy, just confusing, like the umbrella he held. It wasn't supposed to rain all week, so nobody should need an umbrella, but he was still carrying one around. Most of his outfit was like that. At a glance it didn't seem strange, but the more attention you paid the more confusing it got. But he didn't seem too weird. You're not a professional hero. How'd you get down the mountain so fast then? Does it matter? Ken said with a laugh, smiling widely. Besides, you said we could use quirks, so it doesn't really matter how I did. Your cameras should show how anyway. However, no one answered my question. Ken's joking tone switched as he got straight back to business, looking across the teachers for confirmation. Are we canceling the lessons today? Yes, Eraser spoke up from his slumped position, fully relaxed and embedded in the chair now. They should be here by 6, so we'll just push the schedule back. And will they eat dinner first or bathe? When are we making food? Dinner first, and we'll just help the pussycats cook. Eraser then focused on Mandalay, the only pussycat who was both present and unoccupied. What time are you planning to start? 4:30 at the earliest. Most of the cooking is already set up, but there's gonna be a lot of work to feed so many people. Eraser nodded and returned to his slump with a smile. You heard her, and I don't think we need to meet about anything else. Thanks for stopping by, Ken. I'm still not sure why I was needed, but I'm happy to help. Are the buses unlocked? Aizawa tossed Ken a set of keys. They're about to be. Don't forget to show up to cook. Ken bowed one last time before leaving the heroes to continue talking to each other, and leaving the blonde student standing there for a minute looking confused before Ken came back and grabbed him too. Quote. Did he ever actually answer any of our questions? Not really. That's why he's Ken. Chapter end notes. Yo Yigatiyo. Did you know writing people going fast is hard to get across? I didn't. I'm still learning things while writing this mess, and that's amazing. But I've got some questions to answer probably, or at least some facts to straighten out. The path was 3.5 miles. The average high schooler runs an 8-minute mile, while the average good runner can do it in 5 minutes. This doesn't include things like running on a slope, running past obstacles, or fighting giant dirt monsters who are specifically not stone monsters. Asterisk first mile was in 7 minutes, plus a 1-minute break at the end. Asterisk second mile was in 5 minutes, plus a 1-minute break at the start because Kaminari immediately crashed. Asterisk third mile was in 3 minutes, no breaks. Last half mile was a 1-minute sprint, no breaks. The last 2 times aren't just the shortest because they kept going faster, but because they stopped running into monsters. They just also were going faster. Ronin's speed comes from the large jumps he can make with his bodysuit and boots, moving fast the same way All Might does when he wants to go as fast as possible. Kaminari forces his legs to move faster than they normally should, including faster than he can react, which is why he immediately crashes. Other minor housekeeping stuff I couldn't fit in this chapter cause I'm too lazy. The other 2 wild pussycats are on a mission right now I think and don't show up today at all. The time by the end of the chapter is 10:09, about 8.5 hours before the other students are supposed to arrive. Another chapter that was supposed to go live yesterday but didn't. It's been a while since the last one, but I'm gonna start working on the next chapter today. Nobody reads these notes anyways, so time to shut up and bail. Adios. Chapter 118. Chapter summary. Just talk about swords, a 100% filler chapter with no plot development. Nope. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Ronin led Kaminari away from the other heroes in the meeting that he still didn't understand the point of and over to the buses, running a quick mental check for where all the students' items were crammed so he could find the things he wanted before the other students managed to figure out how running away worked. Kaminari, what's your class number? Like in the school or in class? 'Cause I'm in 1A. In class. Number 7 I think. Ronin nodded, then opened up the back of the bus, taking out a few gray metallic suitcases before finally pulling out a slightly larger one with a green 7 feet on the front. This is your hero uniform, right? Kaminari popped it open, amazed for some reason that his suitcase would contain his clothes. Yeah, where'd you get this? I am teaching you for a week. I requested all the students who failed their final exam could have their uniforms brought along the trip. Ronin grabbed his own things before he shut and locked up the bus again, then led Kaminari back to the strange building in the middle of nowhere. Come on, I said I'd teach you how to clean your sword, and now's as good a time as ever. How are you holding up? Oh, I'm pretty good. My legs hurt a bit and they can't stop shaking, but they don't hurt that much. Well, that wasn't bad, but that definitely wasn't good either. Picking an activity that would have them both sitting down was a good choice, as it seemed Kaminari had overtaxed his legs on the run down. Ronin ducked in quickly to drop off the keys again, tossing them to Vlad King before moving into the teaching room. This building had a lot of useless rooms, and one of them had been given to him to teach Exam F. He might as well use it for its intended purpose as he unlocked the door and opened it up, flicking on the lights and pointing to the closest table. Put your kid on the table and sit down, relax your legs. They just did a lot of work and could use a break. Gotcha, sir. Kaminari sauntered over, dropping the suitcase and then falling into the nearest chair. Man, you're right, even metal chairs feel comfy when you're this sore. How often do you practice using electricity on your legs? Ronin placed all 3 of his bags on the table, then opened the weapon bag, pulling out his maintenance kit for his swords. He didn't have a spare, so they were just going to have to take turns working on their swords. Like I did back there. Just that alone let Ronin know Kaminari hadn't been using it a lot. Once in a while. I figured by how you weren't used it. You don't adjust to something by not doing it, you know. Ronin took out Yamato, placing it on the table while removing the umbrella cover. You're not in trouble, I'm just trying to get an estimate for how much you've practiced with it. Like, 6 times. I kept crashing though so I stopped. Constantly crashing does sound like a good reason to stop. If Kaminari tried to use that move indoors, he'd run out of room very quickly. Kaminari seemed to lack the finesse to control how much power he put out, so he'd either use the electricity at full power like today or use very little like he did back when they were training for a week. Kaminari had practiced using very little power in his legs back then but got very little results, however, it was very easy to control. Today he had lost control a few times but only spun out once, right at the beginning when he went all out. How much have you used your sword since we last met? Now he turned the conversation towards what he'd brought Kaminari into the teaching room for, tapping the larger suitcase to back up what he was saying. Kaminari's suitcase had been modified so it could store his katana, an object so long the normal suitcases couldn't hold it. Oh, a lot. We've had a lot of exercises and hero training against each other and robots. Kaminari popped the suitcase and pulled out the sword, already sheathed, and handed it off to the still-standing vigilante. Ronin unsheathed the sword and could already start to see problems. Kaminari, have you ever looked up how to clean a sword? He could tell that Kaminari had been fighting robots, the blade had probably never been cleaned or oiled properly, the handguard was getting loose, and overall this blade had seen better days. Nope, didn't even know blades needed to be cleaned till now. Got it. Well, we'll start repairing them. Ronin placed an assortment of tools. We're gonna take this slowly since we can only go one at a time if that makes sense. Yup, I watch, then I do. Got it in one. Ronin picked up the first tool, a small hammer that came with a pin. We're gonna remove the sword handles first, so we have to detach the handle by removing the connection. There's a small wooden pin in the handle that connects them, and we're gonna knock it out with this. Ronin flipped his sword so the handle was over the table, tapping the wooden piece gently to dislodge it. Don't hit it too hard, this connector is wooden, we're hitting it with metal. Ronin then handed it over, watching Kaminari mimic his motions with exaggerated effort. It had to be said Kaminari put 100% into everything, including his face motions. His expressions really made everything more interesting to watch, if nothing else as he daintily tapped out the wooden pin. Ronin caught it before it rolled off the table, then grabbed his own sword again. Now we're going to get the blade by itself, so we remove all the other stuff on it. Ronin removed the handle, a washer-like piece that went between the handle and the handguard, another washer that went between the handguard and the floater that separated coated the bottom of the blade. Ronin named them off in order, starting with that first washer piece. This the seppa, the suba, the seppa again, and finally the hibakino. Kaminari, you don't have to memorize this. It's just helpful to know just in case any of this breaks. Oh, can you find replacement parts on Google and stuff? They said each part they took off on the table, in a row to make it as easy as possible to remember what went where. So we start using more of the sword repair stuff now. Yup, but we're gonna have to use a little more for your sword. Hold this for a second. Ronin traded swords with Kaminari and picked up another item from the sword repair kit, a bottle of oil. Swords use oil as a form of protection against mundane things like water and dust. Since your sword never got oiled, I'm going to oil it to collect all the grime, then wipe it off. I get you, it's like how Kirishima wears a shirt. It doesn't protect against attacks, it just blocks the little annoying stuff. Kirishima. Ah, that was one of the other students who were in exam F. Defensive quirk in 1A. That meant he had hardening if Midoriya's memory was correct. Quote. Yeah, a bit of a strange comparison but true. I didn't think of it like that. That was a weird thought that Ronin wasn't sure when he'd be able to shake off, if he ever managed to. Ronin instead focused on applying the oil again. Mineral oil is pretty good for this part. Some oils go bad quickly, but mineral oil's got the staying power to keep a sword good. If you want I can write down a list of things you need for a sword repair kit. Nope, I'm already writing this down. Ha, beat you to the punch. Kaminari held up his phone with a confident smirk. Excellent work, Kaminari. Ronin shook his head for a second, then got back into the monologue. When you're putting on the oil, you want to use a soft cloth like this one. This spreads it out evenly and makes it easier. Then we wipe it off with this piece of paper, specially designed to do so. It's also pretty soft, and you can find it by googling. What's it called and how do you spell it? Nuguigami, Nuguigami. Getting it from a store is pretty annoying, I'd recommend just ordering it online. He spent a couple of hours trying to find a store that sold it so he could buy it in person and make sure nothing could be traced back to his civilian identity. Here, this is the part both of us can do. I'll trade you back swords. They switched again, and this time there were enough tools for both of them. Nuguigami papers usually came in packs, so he had some spare that both of them could use. Alright, now we're going to lightly just this down the blade. Not a lot of force, just a quick wipe and we're done. Gotcha, light and easy. Hey, sensei. Yes. What got you into swords and stuff anyway? Uh-oh. Quote. A lot of stuff. I wasn't at a very good place in my life for a long time, and it just kept getting worse. Ronin put down the now oily piece of paper and quickly checked Kaminari's motions, nodding to himself at his student's performance and then picking up a strange ball on a stick. We're going to use this to put powder on the sword next. The powder sticks to the remaining oil and helps us wipe it off so the sword really is clean. If the oil is like washing your hands with water, this dust is the soap. Ronin methodically dusted Yamato as he spoke, moving slowly and steadily across the blade. Quote. I picked up fighting to express myself, in a way. I wanted to prove myself, I wanted to spread a message. I wanted a lot of things when I started. Kaminari said after a pause, looking up to him with hopeful eyes. Did you? No, I don't think I have yet. Ronin smirked at the thought, remembering a random street that was coated in flames as his dreams were burnt to the ground, then remolded into something harder. But not hard enough, it seemed. He could still feel the hate towards those heroes in that alleyway, the heroes who had berated him for helping while praising someone who only caused more problems, only because one of them had a quirk. The heroes who were willing to sit back and watch a child die, only caring about their reputation and bottom lines. Had anything changed yet? Had they changed anything yet? Ronin thought on this as he handed off the powder ball to Kaminari, who took it and started mimicking his motions before speaking up again. Well, when will you? Quote. I'm not entirely sure if I even can, or if I ever will anymore. Ronin laughed to himself, this was getting awfully down for a tutorial on cleaning swords. Don't forget to flip sides Kaminari, we want both sides to be dusted. Got it, sir. Kaminari responded with a smile as he spun the sword and got back to work. Hey, sensei, can I ask you some more questions? You're asking that now? You've been asking questions for a while Kaminari. Ronin chuckled, shaking his head as he prepared the next pieces of paper to wipe off the blade. Go ahead Kaminari, ask away. If you know you can't achieve it, what's the point? For someone widely considered to be an idiot, he was asking some good questions. Better than Yuki was anyway, and he was pretty sure only one of them thought up their questions in advance. Quote. It's back in that burning street, what had he been trying to achieve? When he first fought a bunch of drunk teens with a metal bar, 5-on-1, why had he bothered? It wasn't for something as complicated as judging hero society, back then. He hadn't been trying to spread some big message back then. He had just seen people in need of help and it's not that complicated actually, it's just illogical. It's like cleaning this sword, in a way. Do you remember why we oil it? Kaminari finished patting his sword down with powder and put the ball down, picking up the cleaning paper Ronin offered him while reflecting on this cleaning lesson. Quote. Kirishima's shirt. To keep off the minor stuff so it stays clean and in top shape. Kaminari exclaimed with a wide smile, happy to remember the reason with his tricks. But it gets dirty anyways. So, why do we oil it? This wasn't something they had brought up and required some more creative thinking on Kaminari's part, serving as a mini quiz for the aspiring hero. To keep it as clean and top shape as it can get. Ronin nodded with a smile, thinking back to the start, just an idiot running around with a dull chunk of metal that only a blind man would have called a katana. A sword will never be fully clean. There will always be a little dirt on it, but we can still make it the best sword it can be. In swordsmanship, we might never be the best, but we can strive to be better than we were. Some goals can never be achieved. Somebody once said perfection is impossible to reach, but only by striving for it can we achieve excellence. The man spoke with a vague memory of some kid dive-bombing criminals from the ceiling because he had no idea how to really fight, listening and learning with every opponent he took on as he took that dull chunk of metal and slowly carved an identity, forcing himself to improve. Whoa, who said that? Not a clue, but it sounds smart, so somebody definitely said it by now. Remember to be gentle as you wipe off the dust and oil. Ronin pulled back from all the sentimental moments to focus on what he was doing right now, without damaging Yamato. When you're done wiping it off, we're gonna apply the new layer of oil. Just like before, right? Right on the money. Ronin checked the rag, applying more oil quickly and then slowing down as he put the rag to the blade, carefully moving it down the sword's length. Once again, slow and careful moves. A lot of swordsmanship is pretty slow, actually. Who'd you learn your moves from? You've got some really fancy stuff and know a whole bunch of cool techniques. I'm self-taught, I'm afraid. I learned my techniques through research and refinement, along with a lot of fighting. I'm still learning new moves, Kaminari, and I've even learned a few from you. Really? What, did you think I was just pretending when I used your thunderclap and bolt? To be honest, Ronin was amazed he could even remember the name of that move, he was sure he'd just remember the motion, but somehow the name stuck too. I see someone wasn't paying attention when we went down the mountain Tilda. Whoa, Kaminari blinked for a couple of seconds, then cracked another smile. He seemed happy, but his joking tone seemed to suggest another emotion. Thanks for using my joke move, it's a good move. Them copying it had little to do with their sentimental appreciation for Kaminari, but for the functionality of the move. Wraith would use any move if it helped him win, but it seemed Kaminari didn't understand that. Well then, double thanks. Kaminari laughed as he took the rag from Ronin, his smile growing wider while his eyes shifted downward. Quote. You don't have to lie about it though, I get that it's pretty dumb. Kaminari. The monster put a hand on the weakling's head, gently but firmly forcing them to look into each other's eyes, a motion that usually encouraged people to listen and pay active attention. It spoke slowly and clearly, taking its time with its words so it didn't mess this up. I only deal with facts and logic. I don't bother with lying, and you created a useful move that is useful in a variety of situations. Kaminari, your move is not dumb. You are not dumb. You are not going to be a good hero. You already are a good hero. Stop doubting yourself. If you keep oiling the blade, I promise that you will be one of the greatest. You mean it? The weakling's eyes were wide, seeming to be amazed, but this wasn't amazing. It was just facts, facts that both weaklings needed not just to realize but understand and internalize. I know a man who wanted to be the greatest hero in the world but got so focused on gaining power that he's becoming one of its greatest villains. I know a violent criminal who's indecisive and can't make decisions and has ended up doing a lot of stupid shit because of it. I know this dumbass who refuses to accept his actions and can't face the consequences. The monster kept its attention on the weakling in front of it, even if this also applied to the other weakling. You might take a little more time to understand things, but even then you've got a great mindset and performance. You're doing way better than a lot of people, Kaminari. The monster took a step back and let go of the weakling's head, stretching its arms and legs. It had been running and standing for the last hour or so, and now its legs were starting to hurt. Stop doubting yourself. You're brighter than you think. You are lightning, after all. The weakling stood still for a second, then looked at the sword. His smile felt a little different, a little less cheer and a little more sobriety as he sniffed. Oh, was he crying? Oh no, did he fuck up talking again? Quote. Thanks, Mr. Ken. It means a lot. Quote. It's no problem, Kaminari. Midoriya was 1,000,000% he wasn't good at this sort of stuff, but he'd at least handle this better than last time. If you have problems, just anything comes up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You are smart, but we all need help, and I'd be happy to help you. Kaminari swallowed then looked up with slightly red eyes and a small smile. It wasn't as huge as usual, but it seemed more earnest. Might take you up on that sometime, sensei. Sorry. Don't be. We all have things we need to deal with, and I think I already said it but I'm happy to help you. He wasn't sure what level of physical contact they should have, so he went for a smile and more eye contact. You need a minute? No, yeah, just. Give me a second. Ronin took a step back and grabbed a chair for himself while Kaminari sat at the desk, setting down the sword and rag while he worked through his thoughts. Alright, I think I'm good. So, swords. What do we do next? What's the next part of cleaning? We're gonna put everything back together, and after that, we're done. Remember the order it all goes in? Yep, bet I can put it back together before you. Kaminari smiled as he grabbed all the pieces, sitting a little taller in his chair. Ronin snorted a little and shook his head, then grabbed all his pieces. You sure can try. Chapter and notes. Yo, what a boring chapter, glad no one in it fucks up emotional moments while boringly explaining katana maintenance. Link for where I learned how to clean a sword. You read the chapter, I read the chapter, and I've got nothing to say other than I can't write dialogue. You can't tell me that I can't write emotional moments, because I already know it. Here's hoping I at least did better than the last time. Now I'm gonna jump out a window cause that last scene had over 20 rewrites. Adios. Alright, I'm not sure anyone read the original chapter, but everything above this edit is the original chapter. I just wanted to take a second to explain what's happening, but it's late right now, so I'm sure I'll do a better job in the morning. Problem is I like to sleep in and some of y'all are morning birds, so I wanted to explain why this came up. Kaminari in canon is treated kind of similar to how Midoriya in canon was treated in middle school, like a joke. No one takes him seriously, he's the butt of a lot of jokes, and to top it all off he's got the worst grades in the class. People repeatedly refer to him as the idiot in 1A, and the only other person who gets the shaft as bad as him is Mineta, one of the smartest people in class 1A who just lets his dick do the talking most of the time. I'm rambling about this because a lot of people look down on Kaminari, jokingly or seriously. Him having some confidence issues wouldn't be ridiculous in my opinion, but hey. It's late. Who knows, I might go back and delete this chapter when I wake up cause I'm not a psychologist. This is a little dreary at the end, but I hope I can do that. Kaminari's not all sunshine and jokes, he's supposed to be a real person with insecurities like being taken seriously and not being used to people listening to him. IDK, I'm tired and I'm going to bed. CYA when this chapter gets deleted. Chapter 119. Chapter Summary. This is the chapter summary, but what is a summary? Is it just cutting out the unimportant parts and shrinking everything down until you're left with only the necessary information? Is it a list of facts about the chapter? Could it be trying to speak of the chapter's intentions in a short period? No, it's just saying what happens with fewer words. Don't get so dramatic, geez, calm down. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Kaminari finished reassembling his katana, holding it up to look at it in the light with a look of wonder. Man, it's so shiny. Is this the same sword I made? Don't know, I'm not the one cleaning it. Did you do some wizardry while I wasn't looking? Ronin checked the grip on his sword, then flipped it upside down and disassembled the pommel, replacing the battery quickly while Kaminari wasn't paying attention. You can do a lot when you put in the effort, Kaminari. Natural talent hits walls, passion burns itself out, but discipline will never leave you. No one can take, and only you can get it. Kaminari looked away from his sword with a smirk. Betcha thought I forgot that, didn't ya? Guilty as charged. Ronin sheathed Yamato, slightly shaking his head before guessing the time. They arrived at 10, they had been doing this for under an hour, so it shouldn't be 11 yet, but for an early lunch. Almost time for lunch. Are you hungry yet? Dude, I'm starving. I could eat a. Huh. Kaminari had pushed his chair back but didn't stand up. Man, my legs hurt like a bitch. Ah, language. No, it's fine, Kaminari. You used a technique for longer than ever today, and you might have hurt your legs. We probably should have stretched a little more. Kaminari had used the lightning legs trick for at least 5 minutes. That wasn't the longest time Kaminari had used his quirk for, even on his legs, but it was the longest he had while outputting that kind of power. Some of the muscles might be burned or snapped from overwork. We also should have taken a break while going down the mountain. Hey, it's all good. Well, it will be once I get some water. Kaminari reminded the idiotic vigilante that he had promised his student water once they reached the bottom, and he had yet to uphold his end. Should have said something sooner, he grumbled as he placed a water bottle on the desk between them, then sat back down and started to massage his own legs. How are you feeling? Legs aching from overuse, or from something else? Asheo, they're pretty hot too. Sheesh. Kaminari rolled up his pants and poured some of the water on his legs before rubbing them. The water probably didn't do anything, but hey, if it felt nice, who was Ronin to judge? I was planning on having us practice later, but you might need to take a long break. Ronin reflected on how he would rest after a hard fight. Before he realized that he was also terrible at resting, and was in no place to give advice to anyone about resting. They could try meditation, but that was more of a mental thing, and Kaminari might have physical problems. Plus, with Kaminari's attention span, sitting in one place trying to think about nothing was closer to torture than relaxing. Hey, I can still practice. Just don't expect any sudden moves. Kaminari wanted to continue, which was a good mindset, but... No, if you keep going without rest, you'll just hurt yourself more. The monster spoke with authority, shutting down Kaminari's speech before he could give it. Something not taught in hero schools is that taking a break is important. You need to take time to recuperate after fights, to relax and get away from your job, for both the sake of your body and your mind. Like, how long of a break should I take? That depends on what you're taking a break from. The larger the problem, the larger the break. For example, you just have sore muscles and self-injuries from training too hard. You should reevaluate yourself in an hour and be realistic, and we shall go from there. From training too hard, I've only been training for like an hour. That was putting it lightly. They had run for under 30 minutes, then stood around for another 20 or so, then they had been in here for a while. It was hard to tell with no sunlight and there was no clock in sight. Which is why it's impressive that you managed to hurt yourself so quickly. The monster was genuinely surprised someone managed to hurt themselves in under an hour. To know your limits is to know yourself, and to know yourself is the first step to true control. You surpassed your limits, which sounds good in the shows and stories, but you have to pay the price for that now. I surpassed my limits just by running down a mountain. By running down a mountain really fast, yes, and you were able to control your run. Somewhat. We'll be working to give you more control over yourself this week so you can use this technique whenever you want, and outmaneuver that pesky principal. While they had a minute, the monster wanted some questions answered and lunch wouldn't be for. It wasn't sure, it couldn't find a clock. Lunch wasn't happening yet at least, it definitely wasn't even 11:30 yet. I had some questions about your final if you don't mind. Oh yeah. Kaminari's enthusiasm slipped away like the sun in a storm. It was clear that despite their little talks, Kaminari still was pretty upset that he lost that fight. But Ronin had tried to encourage him before, and now the monster just wanted answers. You fought against Fur Principal Nezu. You fought with Ashido Mina. You fought inside a construction or machinery zone. Is all of this correct? The monster drew the file on their fight in the blink of an eye, reading it off before locking eyes with Kaminari. Yeah, we were in the same arena with the principal. We never actually saw him. Give me a play-by-play of the fight. What happened from start to finish? So we started by talking to each other and saying that we probably shouldn't use our quirks cause we might accidentally kill the principal if we hit him. And right out the gate they were raising alarms. Nezu's notes for problem said, didn't think things through, these two use their quirks too much, which was inherently bullshit. Every hero in the world used their quirk too much, and Mina and Kaminari put in enough forethought to realize their quirks might be lethal to Nezu, which also meant they didn't rely on their quirks. Not relying on their quirks at all was a real problem, and it was a problem that the monster intended to address. A good decision overall, keep going. So we made our way towards the exit, but then buildings and stuff started getting smooshed. We found out after that Nezu was in this big crane and was destroying the city and blocking almost all of the exits. We just ran around dodging falling stuff and got stuck in a collapsing building until time ran out. That's it. Yup, pretty bad, huh? The monster breathed very slowly, before piecing together a smile, working through the problem. Nezu said Kaminari and Mina both didn't think enough and used their quirks too much. These were truths, in a vacuum, but once tested fell apart. The students not thinking things through was somewhat true, but couldn't be proven in this situation. For example, the students had no idea how Nezu was breaking the buildings. Since it was a crane, it could have been electrocuted by Kaminari and prevented. If they could reach the crane, which they didn't know existed. And if Nezu didn't block them off. While Kaminari went to electrocute the crane he didn't know existed, Mina could have used her quirk to melt through the rubble and forced her way to the finish line. They would have both failed Nezu's forethoughts about quirk usage, but they would have passed the exam. It was a lose-lose scenario, and given how Nezu handled Zero, Kaminari might not pass. But, thinking about Kaminari's situation, it only got worse. They didn't know how Nezu was breaking everything, and the monster's first thought was simple. Explosives. Those wouldn't be able to be stopped by Kaminari though, so he wouldn't try to stop them, and because he wouldn't stunlock the crane they'd lose. This situation was, practically speaking, unwinnable. It was not difficult, it was impossible. The monster made an educated guess that Nezu got caught up in the fight and went too far, but no one pointed out how unfair the fight was because he was the principal. Was this how the #1 hero school in Japan ran itself? Disgusting and disappointing. You lost by timeout and got stuck in a collapsing building. Good endurance. Surviving a building falling on your head wasn't easy, even if UA probably didn't use real buildings. Hopefully, they didn't, as that doubled both as a huge waste of budget and a huge risk to the students when things like this happen. But now, you know the question I want to ask you. Quote. I'ma keep it real, sensei, I have no idea what questions you want to ask me. Can I have some more water? Sure. Why didn't you use the thunderclap and flashed out maneuver the collapsing buildings? Finish drinking then respond, Kaminari. Kaminari finished off half the bottle then looked up confused at Ronin. What would I use the thunderclap and flash for? It's a super move, but you can't kill a building. I understand. Something not even Midoriya had considered was that this was a mentality problem, not in the same way that the weakling had mentality problems though. Kaminari saw his techniques as just attacks, moves to be brought out once but only useful in a fight. That's how heroes treated super moves, as techniques that could be used once to turn an entire fight around. Why was he just saying this in his head? This was stuff Kaminari needed to hear. Quote. Kaminari, it's a little hard to show in here. We'll have to go outside for this. You think you can walk, or is there some serious damage? I'll walk, I just won't like it. Get used to me complaining, chief. Kaminari said he'd complain, but he was still smiling as he followed Ronin outside. Kaminari sat back up in the shade inside the forest on a folding chair, playing with his chair and having a grand time. Only 3 of his legs were touching the ground and he was having a blast rocking back and forth on those legs, smiling like $1,000,000. Ronin removed his large flowy coat so Kaminari could get a good view of his movements and follow along. That coat had been designed to hide his exact body size and make it harder to see how small he really was while obstructing people from seeing what he was actually doing, and while all that was great in a fight, it wasn't just bad for teaching, it made everything harder, so the coat had to go. Kaminari, what is a super move? Ronin draped the coat over a branch before getting into some more serious stretches, warming up for the show he was gonna put on. He didn't like trying to show off his skills, but he was gonna have to try to get the point across. Is this a trick question? More like setting the groundwork for what I'm gonna work with this week. There are no hard rules or wrong answers, I just want to hear your opinion. Can I take a minute? Whenever you're ready. Ronin checked his kit while Kaminari started a whole bunch of sentences and left most unfinished. In my defense, we haven't had this lesson in class yet. That's why you're going to give me your opinion, and not Aizawa's opinion or Yue's opinion or whoever they send to teach you about super moves. A super move is a move that's super. A weak start, but Kaminari started to tear it apart. So, it's a move that's better than normal. It's a special thing that's better than what you can normally do. Now that was a great answer, Kaminari. Much more thought put into that than the UA heroics course put into anything, from how this mess was shaping up. You better keep that in mind, not just for this lesson but because I suspect UA will give you a much worse answer. Thanks. Now part 2. Is the thunderclap and flash a super move? Quote. Yes, cause I normally can't move that fast, you can't. Ronin cut him off early with an eyebrow raised. Why not? Cause. I don't know, magic. Quote. Kaminari, we just ran down a mountain in under 30 minutes. But I used that special dash thing for some of it. The first section, we still did that in 7 minutes, and if we kept that pace up we still would have gotten done in 30 minutes. Ronin finally finished the last of his stretching and equipment checking, tying Yamato into place while he did all his flips and shit. If a super move is beyond what you can normally do, the thunderclap and flash is an ordinary move that you can do. Thunderclap and flash is a technique that you can do anytime and anywhere. Ronin backed up his words with action, subtly dashing forward and disappearing as he zoomed into the forest before turning on a dime and stopping. And doesn't take a lot of energy to use. If you get creative, you can get a lot of uses out of it. Most super moves are more powerful versions of regular moves. For example, Ronin pointed to Kaminari to drill home his words. Your thunderstorm and crash. Now, that's a super move. It's a move that you can't use anywhere and takes a lot of energy to pull off, plus it's not a move you can use a lot of times in a row. But it's incredibly powerful, so it's a super move instead of a waste of time. Whoa, I already made a super move. I promised you that you'd have a super move at the end of that week, and I meant it. At least, he did by their definition. Whether or not the other heroes would agree was an issue only time could tell. But, super moves have flaws, namely, they're usually very hard to use. They take energy or time to use most of the time. What's up, Kaminari? Kaminari lowered his hand as he asked his question. What do you mean when you say usually? Are there super moves that don't take a lot of time or energy? Some idiots do a normal move and give it a flashy name to pretend it's a super move. Those aren't really super moves in my book, but if you check the hero registry they're still up there, so someone thinks they count. Ronin shrugged as he walked back over, keeping a hand on Yamato subconsciously. The point is that a strong super move can change the flow of battle, but it needs to be built off of a strong base. Your work with the thunderclap and flash is what makes you so good with the thunderstorm and crash. Oh, it's like a tied skill in a video game. Kaminari reworded Ronin's rant into his own terms so he could more easily remember it when he needed it. It's like a skill that's tied to base damage. You increase base damage by 1, you increase the skill's damage by 10 or something. Excellent Kaminari, and you're already catching on. Ronin nodded at Kaminari's explanation but thought the example could go a little further. But a super move isn't tied to just one skill, it's usually a lot of basic skills coming together to create a result more powerful than the basic skills on their own. So, in order to create strong super moves, you need strong basic skills. So you want me to raise my basics? Like, you want me to work out? Sort of. You can work out at any time and don't really need to be here to do that, so we're gonna focus on stuff that we need to be here for. We're gonna lay the groundwork so you can keep training and improving after this camp. Ronin walked up to Kaminari and lightly tapped one of his legs. Right now, your body isn't strong enough to keep up with your quirk, so we're gonna fix that. Work on how much electricity you can use in your legs, improve your form, and add some things on later as we go. Is that what this camp is for? Not a clue and don't care, because it's what I'm going to be doing. We're trying to make the students overcome their weaknesses and improve their basics this week. And right now, I want to help you Kaminari. Ronin took a step back from the sitting student and leaned against a tree opposite him, stretching his neck before settling in like the edgelord he pretended to be. But I'm an impatient guy. I don't help just anyone, I only want to offer my services to those who want them. We sort of got swept together in the mountain thing, but you've got a choice in this. You want to train with your classmates. Kaminari did at least think for a minute before answering. What are they gonna do? They're training quirk usage, something that you struggle with if I remember correctly. They're going to push their quirks to their limits, and then surpass them just like you did on that mountain. It'll be sore, but your quirk will get a lot stronger. What do you think? Huh, Kaminari didn't think too long this time before he answered. But I don't want my quirk to get stronger, I want to get stronger. It's like you said with the bullets and the explosion, it's not about the power, it's how you use it. Guess you were listening more than I thought. Ronin shook his head before pushing off the tree and walking towards Kaminari, offering him a hand up. Come on then, we're gonna go grab lunch and then the real work starts, so look alive. Yup, Kaminari took the hand and pulled himself up, meeting Ronin's gaze with a confident smile as they started to walk towards the building. Should we get the folding chair? Nah. Won't they wonder where it went? Maybe. And if they do, blame Nezu. Chapter and notes. Yeet, this was fun. Fewer rewrites than the last chapter, but we should see some real action next chapter and hopefully the rest of Class 1A. Plus, a hint of how Ronin's gonna handle being forced to teach a bunch of idiots he doesn't like. A thing I just wanted to put in just in case anyone was crazy enough to try and find where Kaminari gets the quote from, it's from chapter 51 and Kaminari misquotes. He gets the first and second lines right, but after that he starts abbreviating. Have fun with that if you're crazy. But hey, stuff, things, I don't have a lot to put here cause not much happened in this chapter, but I always say I am lazy. This one's on me, I'll try harder next chapter, and... yeah, I'm just tired. Small brain plays out here. Wanted to address that no, Kaminari can't do that all the time and what Midoriya has planned for this mess, but we'll go into detail about that stuff next chapter. Right now it's a transition between the Kaminari bonding and the real training section. But now, I'm tired. Adios, I'm asleep for 1,000 years. Can't wait to find out all the cringe I'm sleep writing. Chapter 120. Chapter Summary. Start with stance then move. The odd chapter summary, since I don't know what's supposed to go here I usually just cram in my plan for the chapter here and replace it with something funnier later. I just wanted to leave this one since it was so short and so vague. Maybe this is where this chapter started to go wrong. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Ronin led the way away from the training ground with Kaminari in tow, who was still walking a little funny. Hey, I've got another question. What was the point of coming outside? I thought I would need to demonstrate more than I did, was the response, but the real answer was because he didn't really think this through. He didn't think he'd have just one student this early age, he totally did think he'd wind up with just one student, but he figured that'd be by day 2 at the earliest. Once again, he was back to winging everything and pretending it was all part of some plan that he didn't have. Like what they were going to eat for lunch, Ronin had no idea if the teachers even prepared food just in case the students did get there early. Worst case scenario though, they split the food Ronin brought. Not that big of a deal, but it meant Ronin had to point Kaminari towards the dining hall while he picked up his supply bag, just in case. Speaking of the dining hall, that really raised questions of what this building was supposed to be. It had a cafeteria, so was it some kind of campsite the heroes had taken over? Was the cafeteria a recent addition to the place? A better question, did anyone care about this besides him? Kaminari pulled him out of his thoughts, as usual, waving hello with a sandwich in his hand. Hey sensei, sit here, over here. Like he was gonna sit somewhere else. Technically they could, but that was just being a dick. Ronin approached but didn't sit down, looking around. Where'd you get food from Kaminari? Kaminari had already taken a bite of his food, so he didn't bother verbally responding and just pointed to the kitchen. Inside was one of the professional heroes, Mandalay, standing behind the counter and talking to someone. They had to be pretty short since he couldn't see the other person over the counter. Want Tomi? No, I just need the kitchen for a moment, then I'll return to you. Ronin moved past the rows of tables and went both to get some food and see who Mandalay was talking to while he adjusted his grip on his bag, picking out what he'd make for himself. Maybe he'd just make a sandwich and save the food for Laterno, he'd definitely save his food if he could. He wanted a quick meal here, and he didn't want anything that required cooking. Oh, Ken, I was wondering where you were when your student came by without you. Mandalay greeted him before he even got halfway to the kitchen, looking up from whoever else she was talking to. He's a student to all of us now, not just me. If you want to try training him for a bit, just ask, but you'll probably have your hands full with the other students. Ronin was a little interested in seeing what the other teachers would be doing, but not enough to go out of his way to find out. Especially because he was pretty confident it'd piss him off, like everything he learned about UA these days. Ah, Kota, you weren't there when we introduced him to the other teachers. Mandalay glanced down, referring to the unseen second person in the kitchen right as Ronin rounded the corner, looking around for the parts to make a sandwich for. A very familiar kid glared up at him. He wore a red hat with 2 horns coming out of it, with spiked black hair jutting out. He looked familiar. No, they knew him. They remembered him almost as much as they remembered Kaminari because this failure stuck with them like a thorn in their side, the big moment Midoriya realized his speaking skills were worse than a rock's. This is Kota, my nephew. He's been staying with us so you'll see him around the training grounds. Say hi, Kota. Mandalay gave Sleepy a pat on the back pushing him towards Midoriya. Sleepy looked even less friendly than when they first met, glaring up at Ken. Quote. What are you supposed to be, geezer, some kind of hero? And even less polite to boot, by the sound of it. I am no hero, just an acting teacher. Wraith continued to check for the immediate problem, food. This child was an inconvenience and nothing more, someone with emotional baggage who wasn't their concern. Fretting over him would just waste time and energy. Tisk. Kota seemed pissed off, but they just met in this form. There was no way Kota recognized him, so Kota had no reason to be pissed off at him, yet here they were, wasting time and energy when they were there to get food. This was an issue for a therapist, not a vigilante. Kota. Mandalay seemed like she wanted to scold him, but he took off into a run immediately. Not that it would help, since Mandalay's quirk let her psychically talk to people from a distance. Still, it was the principle that mattered, and by running off with the last word. If you considered tisk to be a word, he won the argument that was only happening in his own head. I'm sorry. Again, he's not here because he wants to be. Tracking that logic with Midoriya's memories, it seemed Kota was here because his parents died. The gym that he often met Kota at was the one the wild pussycats seemed to attend at least once a week, and Kota had been tagging along with them. That meant Kota's parents hadn't died recently, and since Kota's had told his backstory to Midoriya, it wasn't hard to figure out the rest. He's got a grudge against heroes for some reason, but since I'm just an acting teacher I don't think it's my business to know. Specifically, Wraith didn't want to know. If they did, they might get more involved, and that would waste time like how this whole conversation was wasting his time for finding the bread. He had all the other parts for a sandwich, now where was the bread? His parents were heroes, did she listen to them? Were they just talking for fun? Give the kids some privacy and them some room, this wasn't their business. They died in the line, and he's living with us for now. But he blames heroes for their death. He's going through a rough phase. Well, Kota's view was technically correct. Wraith knew that if heroes were properly trained, they were less likely to die, and that they definitely died because they chose to become heroes. Both parents becoming heroes was just rude, who was supposed to stay home and look after the kid. Those parents created the scenario where Kota would have worries like these, by constantly leaving him alone. Their absence in his life before their death set the groundwork for his current abandonment issues. It was 100% their fault he'd become like this, not because he was a bad person but because their parenting had been awful. You couldn't just tell a kid that though. You couldn't go up to someone who was grieving and explain this entire scenario was because their parents didn't think this through, that was a dick move. How were you supposed to tell a kid that his parents really did love him even though they chose their careers over him and didn't think? And this was why Wraith wanted to avoid getting involved, they were getting invested in some idiotic child's mess. Wraith didn't know how to comfort a child with those issues, and he didn't care. That was what psychiatrists were for, not vigilantes. He was focused on preventing future problems and changing the system, not trying to patch every minor issue with the current system. That was what heroes did, and it was why they never went anywhere. Kota was a perfect example of why the hero system needed to change. He wasn't blaming hero society for his parents' deaths, he was correctly identifying the cause of their deaths. If hero society had been built better they probably wouldn't have died. But this wasn't relevant to the current issue of finding bread, and Mandalay expected them to respond in some way. They'd go with something generic and safe. He's going through a rough phase, but it will be much more smooth with the proper support. Like a psychiatrist, if he has the right people helping him along, he will cope better. These were obvious facts, but it made Mandalay smile as she finally moved away from where she was standing in front of the bread, hiding it from Wraith and out of the kitchen. I hope so. Thanks for the help. It's nothing. It really wasn't any sort of help, it was just facts. Facts that it seemed were going to be ignored as Mandalay left the kitchen, probably to return to the other heroes who weren't eating yet. Know that Wraith could see a clock, it was still a little early for a traditional lunch, but then again they were going to do a lot of work. An early lunch never hurt. Midoriya assembled his sandwich quickly before making his way to Kaminari, who immediately started waving again. Hey, Sensei. Sensei, sit here. Someone's enthusiastic. Feeling any better? Yeah, alright, maybe only a little better, but that's still better. Kaminari went back to eating his sandwich, content to focus on one thing at a time. Gave Midoriya a second to dig into his food himself as well, or at least, get started. They had a lot of work ahead to do, and they needed to start quickly to try and fit it all into 1 week. Kaminari finished first. Obviously, he had a huge head start since someone wanted to waste all their time in the kitchen. Alright, that was just being a dick again. But Kaminari redirected them to the focus of the day when he finished, trashing his paper plate before sitting down again with a big smile. So, Sensei, what's next? Ronin stood back from Kaminari, looking him over repeatedly before speaking. Your feet are too far apart. Bring that back leg in a little. They were back in the training ground after having finished eating, and Kaminari was just standing there. He didn't have a sword or even a sheath, he was just standing in the shade while Ronin told him small things to change. Squat down a little, you're standing too tall. You'll be off balance if anything touches you. Sensei, you said we're gonna work on the basics, right? Yes. Move your front leg a little to the right, you're turned a little to the left and we want you facing straight forward. Ronin took a few steps around him, focusing on Kaminari's legs right now. Sue, when you said basics. We're working on your stance. All swordsmanship starts at the legs, so we're gonna make sure you start correctly. Ronin stepped back and demonstrated as he took his position in front of Kaminari. Feet about shoulder length apart, one foot forward and the other slightly sideways. Bend at the knees. What does a stance do? Helps you move. Your legs are for positioning and moving, so a stance is for making sure you can safely move in almost any direction. This lets you safely attack and retreat. We'll get into that later. For now, we're gonna practice just getting you into a stance for a bit, then we're gonna practice having you move while in it. Return to a standing position. Ronin did as he said, and Kaminari naturally followed suit. Now, get into position. Move your back leg a little further out. Good. Now, back to standing. And again. And again and again and again, Kaminari scooted backward and forward over and over as he performed the routine, beating it into his head. He took his stance, then scooted forward, leading with the front leg and pushing off with the back leg. Then he scooted backward, leading with the back leg and then pushing off the front leg. Side to side, starting with the same leg as the side he was moving towards. Moving right. Start with the right leg. Left. Vice versa. It was really simple, but that's what made it so easy. Until Ronin started throwing in curveballs. Ready. Ronin didn't bother arming himself, he wouldn't need to. Kaminari now was wearing a padded vest, but his sweat was from his work and not the heat. They had been going over this for hours. Sure, they did take breaks, but over time his energy was slowly used and his effort turned into fatigue. But, he wasn't done yet. Kaminari quickly took another drink of water before coming towards Ronin. Ready, sir. Neither had a weapon for this drill as Kaminari switched into his stance and moved forward, Kaminari because he wasn't attacking and Ronin because he didn't need it. Instead, he carried a strange wooden stick sword made of strips of wood bound together. That fake sword was the thing that kept striking him as they worked through this set of motions. Take positions. Kaminari's body dropped slightly as he got into his stance, spreading his legs out and lowering his center of mass. He leaned forward, waiting for the next command. Approach. Both sides moved towards each other again, Kaminari moving with quick jerky motions as he spoke himself through the motions. Step out, push off, step out, push off. They stopped a few feet from each other, the distance they would have met if they were sword fighting. Kaminari didn't have a moment to lose as Ronin went straight into the next order of business as soon as he was in range. Dodge. Ronin stepped forward as he swung the sword down at Kaminari's head, forcing the aspiring hero on the defensive. This was the move that Ronin usually led with, a dramatic and flashy move that was easy to understand. The sword rose above Ronin's head before hurtling back down, slicing through the air as Kaminari stepped to the side. That attack was useful because it was so easy to see coming, it was super easy to dodge. It served as a warm-up for what they would be doing throughout the exercise. Dodge. Ronin repeated himself as he turned to face Kaminari again. It wasn't until his fifth try that Kaminari realized they had the same stance, but used for entirely different things. Ronin stepped to one side to turn and face Kaminari and Kaminari matched that step, staying away from directly in front of his teacher. Staying straight ahead of the master for too long was the fastest way to get whacked. But, just stepping out of the center line didn't dodge all of the attacks. Ronin's second attack forced Kaminari to come up with a new plan as the blade swept sideways. You couldn't dodge something swinging sideways by stepping to the side, so Kaminari was forced to come up with a new move. Or he had on the fourth try. He didn't do it right until the sixth try though, after he figured out the whole shared stance thing. Kaminari jumped backward while leaning back, the sword's blade narrowly missing his chest. He was off balance now, stumbling backward, and Ronin didn't miss this opportunity to straighten and attack him again, coming at him with another overhead swing. But that meant Ronin had to get the sword over his head, and that took time. While the sword came up, Kaminari forced his body forward just a single step, regaining his balance as he planted his feet before jumping forward, closing the distance until he was close to his master, too close to properly swing a sword. They were just a few inches apart as Kaminari went to grab his master's hands. And then Ronin leapt backward, just like Kaminari had before. Without either switching their stance, they had switched roles, Kaminari going on the offensive while Ronin defended his advantage. Swords are better than hands, but they need room to work. If I can smother you. If. Dodge. Ronin attacked while retreating, pulling off that overhead swing while stepping backward, but Kaminari advanced forward and to the side at the same side, closing the distance between them while dodging the attack. Ronin had sounded discouraging when he said if, but he hadn't said no. That meant if he could get close enough and stop the wave of attacks by getting too close. All win. And just when he got close, Ronin planted his back foot firmly on the ground. His lead leg snapped up and kicked him right in the vest, sending Kaminari backward and into the grass. He rolled for a few seconds before flipping himself, staring up at the treetops. He wasn't hurt majorly, but he was a little winded by that. At least his legs were feeling pretty good. You alright? Did you land on a tree root or anything? Dude, I was just wondering the same thing. Think I'm good. But hey, that was new. That kick definitely didn't have Ronin's full power behind it. None of the master strikes were as fast as possible, but then again, this was training. Ronin wanted to teach him, not kill him, so there was no reason to use full power. Everything made sense if he took a second to think it through. Your style changed as you grew, so the challenge had to grow. I'm not trying to teach you a pattern, I'm teaching you to think. Ronin helped Kaminari to his feet, then glanced towards the mountainside. Looks like we've got company. Kaminari squinted and could vaguely see a blob of people. Crawling, lumbering, shuffling. He saw a bunch of people shuffling through the woods at the base of the mountain, each one looking like shit. Why they look so bad? Because their brains would make a zombie starve to death. He wasn't quite sure what that meant, but Ronin was more busy cleaning up. He looked to be entirely focused on his work, which is why Kaminari was so surprised. His classmates weren't even out of the woods yet, but Sensei managed to spot them without even trying. Throw the vest somewhere and meet up with your class. Eraserhead should have a speech prepared for all of you. I'll finish cleaning up. Kaminari ditched the padding and tossed it to Ronin, stepping away before Ronin called out one last time to him. Almost forgot, one last thing. You're doing great. Ronin locked eyes with him, making sure he understood, before flashing him a smile. You've been putting in a lot of effort, and you might not see the results immediately, but you're still doing great. We'll be working all day tomorrow, so get plenty of rest. I'll meet up with you tomorrow when Eraserhead gives his morning speech, and then we'll split from the group. Eat a lot tonight, you'll need the energy. Now, Kaminari knew his video games, and that definitely sounded like a bunch of hints. He returned the smile and waved goodbye as he ran to meet up with his friends. Eat everything. See ya tomorrow. I getcha. Later. Midoriya watched his student run into the distance before he finished picking up their things his things. Spare water bottles, the vest, and the sword. Mostly the water bottles, he'd brought a ton in case Kaminari got thirsty. It was hot out, and he didn't want the guy getting dehydrated and fainting. He brought everything back to the teaching room he was using to store his stuff before he reunited with the group just in time to see Pixie Bob sexually harassing some of the students. No, that was wrong. Sexual harassment was too strong a word. Sexually annoying some of the students, completely unaware of herself. Kaminari was also there, waving hello to some of the other students and merging with the group. He was met with mostly scowls though, and it made sense. Here they were, tired and dirty after trudging through the forest for hours because they wasted time, just to see Kaminari. He was a little dirty, a little sweaty, but still leagues better than the rest of them. Midoriya slid in next to Eraserhead and Vlad, who were talking about Pixie Bob with Mandalay for a brief moment. Hey, Mandalay, was she always like that? The disgust and disappointment in Eraserhead's voice was both palpable and pleasant. She's a little desperate since she's about the suitable age for, you know. There was a crackle as Bakugo created an explosion in his palm, snarling and interrupting the waste of air this conversation had turned into. Stop talking at us and address something. What is it now, Bakugo? Even with all the sleep in the world, Eraserhead still sounded tired. What's that brat doing here? Bakugo pointed to Kota, and Wraith could feel himself mentally checking out before Mandalay even opened her mouth. She was giving the same spiel as last time while Wraith looked over the children. They were each still in their own class, probably out of instinct, but their inability to form new groups could be detrimental when they faced the real world. Among those students, there was one who stood out the most. The weakling, who the group was currently regarding as an outsider because of their different experiences, was in the group but not currently a part. He'd melt back in though with time. Hopefully. They were teenagers, after all, bad decisions were their specialty, and Wraith knew a certain weakling who made plenty of those every day. Say hello Kota. Mandalay ushered the child to the students, but he didn't respond for a moment, instead snarking again before walking away. Kota. Tisk. There it was again. I don't intend to hang out with guys who want to become heroes. Clear-cut intentions, an understanding of others, and, to back it all up, the spine to stick to it. What an aspiring young child, fitting most of Wraith's ideals before he even hit 10. Was he under 10? He looked under 10. The youth really was the hope of society, and this youth was very much on the same page as Wraith. Even if this child definitely wasn't on the side of heroes. Well, it was another point for villainy, and there wasn't a villain in sight. Impressive, Wraith was sure all he'd see was heroism losing points left and right, but they were actually making villainy look like a better option instead of just making themselves look terrible. Intent. Just how old are you? Robo could have the same questions as Wraith about this guy's age. He seemed way too smart to be under 10, but maybe that's just how he grew up. Wraith didn't know and he cared less than he knew. Hey, precocious brat. Isn't he kind of like you? What? Not at all. Anyway, shut up you GG bastard. What was that even supposed to mean? GG bastard. Good going, good game. Wraith couldn't figure out and something seemed to surpass Kota's age and things he didn't care about. Sorry. Stop standing around and get your bags off the bus. Aizawa ended the strange conversation between the red and white emo and Bakugo, standing as straight as he ever had in his entire life while still looking drop-dead tired. Once you put your bags in your rooms, we'll have dinner in the cafeteria. After that, you'll bathe and go to sleep. We'll start for real tomorrow. Eraserhead dismissed their complaints well, he completely ignored them with ease, pointing towards the bus. Now get going. The students grumbled and groaned as they walked away, leaving the adults and the rogue teen alone as they traveled to the cafeteria. Do you think we made enough food? Definitely, we do this a lot you know Ken. Pixie Bob seemed to be in a good mood still, judging by how her tail waggled through the air. Midoriya was pretty sure Earth Flow, Pixie Bob's quirk, didn't give her a tail, but he didn't care enough to ask. Besides, we made more after you and that student left. Midoriya had been too lazy to leave Kaminari behind and brought him in to help cook when 3:00 backward clock rolled around. Cooking was good practice since it was something everyone had to do at some point in their life, and it would hopefully help the aspiring hero over the next week when he had to cook his own meals. The heroes helped plate out the food as the students began to trickled in until they smelled the food. The students charged in the second they smelled it, each rushing to eat as much food as possible. The mess hall earned its name as students shoveled food into their faces as quickly as they could, leaving the teachers rushing around to keep the food stacked up. Kota at least helped them, lending an extra set of hands to the heroes. He glared relentlessly at the students and was as sassy as ever, but he was at least helping them. The work went as quick as the food, and before they knew it, it was time for the students to hit the baths, leaving the heroes to clean up the war zone that had once been a dining hall. Chapter end notes. Yigiti Edelmaya just a chapter of Wraith being a dick. Why'd it take so long you ask? Simple. ... I'm lazy and started playing computer games. Don't worry, the next chapter is already on the way, I had to cut off some things and they're going in the next one. We'll pick up with the bath scene, and we'll play it as it lies. But first Tilda. I just wanted to give my hot take on Kota and the whole situation, Wraith's thoughts aren't mine. However, I do think there's some truth to Wraith's line of thinking. Kota has abandonment issues, whether he knows it or now, and doesn't trust heroes because his parents died because of heroism instead of raising him. This means both parents were working and worked the same shifts, so that means no one stayed home with Kota while they were working. He probably had a babysitter or something, but I'd guess this might be where his abandonment issue started. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist but I need to say that before anyone gets on my case. This case is made of cardboard, so I'm not sure how many people can get on it at a time, but the principle stands. In other news, the part no one cares about, I'ma take a break to write more of my other fanfic, Violence is Unbeatable. That doesn't mean much, since I do disappear for a few days at a time anyway, but I just wanted to give the whole one person who reads that fanfic a heads up. In the meantime, this was pretty cringe. I'ma bail now. Adios. Chapter 121. Chapter summary. A fun time in a fun place with way too much emphasis on fun for it to be true. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. The hot spring was place of relaxation, where worries were washed away as the body relaxed in the heat. Kaminari had only been to a few hot springs before, it wasn't exactly his thing, but after a hard day of training and contact sparring with Ronin the whole thing looked and felt great. The bamboo reeds, the trickle of water, the atmosphere all of it was great. Really helped his legs, which were still a little burned from the mountain descent and a little achy from the training he'd done with Master. He stretched out in the water, clearing his head and trying to enjoy the moment. The problem was all the other people in the bathhouse who were shooting him glances irregularly for some reason. It was just class 1A in there at the time, cause there were way too many boys between both classes to go at once, so A had gotten to go in first while B had to wait. But there was a strange atmosphere as the students say in the hot water. So, Kaminari, where'd you go? Last time I saw you was right after the bus stopped and we all got out. Yeah, how'd you get here so fast? Did you get injured or something? Oh, his classmates were wondering if he got injured. These guys really were looking out for him. Yeah, I hurt both my legs. I met up with one of the teachers basically as soon as we landed, and then we went down the mountain really quick. Right away, the tension in the hot spring was eased as everyone started to laugh for some reason. You didn't even go an hour into the first exercise. Technically, it only took 30 minutes, so no, he didn't even go through an hour. Lucky him. Yeah. This made more laughter as they shook their heads at Kaminari. Wonder what you're going to have to do tomorrow. Think this will affect our grades. Didn't even know someone was stupid enough to fail. Bakugo scoffed at them as he stretched out. Now shut up everyone, we've only got 10 more minutes and then we're out of here. I'm trying to enjoy it, and if you fuck this up I'll kill you. Whoa, you can relax. Kaminari smiled as he returned to his joking self, poking fun at Bakugo as he was a part of the group again. He wasn't really sure what was going on, but he'd play it all off to the best of his talents. Midoriya helped clean up the mess hall with the other teachers. The students were shown to their rooms after clearing the wild pussycats out of house and home, then divided up and sent to the hot springs in sections. There were so many boys from both classes that they wouldn't all fit, giving the girls twice the time as the boys who had to split up to avoid overcrowding. Eraserhead and Midoriya were on cleanup duty, cleaning all the dishes quickly and uniformly with very few words spoken between them at the start. That was fine for Midoriya, talking wasn't exactly his thing anyway, and Eraserhead didn't seem big on conversations either. Eventually though Eraserhead did break the silence as he took another dish and dried it off. So, what have you got planned for tomorrow with exam F? Depends on the student. I'll ask what they want to do so I can understand what they think their problems are, and if it's a problem I can deal with, I will try to. Kaminari wants to follow my footsteps it seems, so I'm going to teach him to stop using his quirk so much and how to fight properly. Eraserhead seemed satisfied by this answer, nodding. He really needs the help. He has a vague outline, but when rushed has a tendency to go back to default. I'll need to drill proper fighting techniques into him, and that will probably be most of the week. And what about the other students? I predict most will pick the obvious answer and focus on their quirks. We're in a secluded environment and they can start focusing on their quirks development without the risk of damaging something important. Which, Wraith knew, wasn't really an issue for these students. Most heroes had dangerous quirks that required a certain environment so they didn't accidentally destroy anything, but these kids went to UA they could train their quirks any day of the week if they pulled their heads out of their asses and thought for a second. What are you going to do for their remedial lessons? This will be the remedial lessons. They failed the practical heroics exam, so they will have practical remedial lessons. Nezu gave me a bunch of pointless information to teach them, but none of that would help the students pass their practical exams if given the chance to retry, so I won't use it. This is a punishment for failing the practicals, it should be relevant to the practicals. They will probably fight me on the first day, fourth day, and last day. I want to see where they are, so it won't be much of a fight and more like a checkup. Anyone who can hit me leaves my group and will rejoin yours. That confident. Confidence becomes results through effort. We shall see whose confidence was unfounded on the last day, and that was the last of the dishes. Need help putting them away? No, I'll finish up and tell the kids to go to their rooms. Have you been to yours yet? We get rooms. Midoriya was a little taken back at the thought. I thought we'd just sleep in the main area since you were passed out in a chair. I can't tell if you're being serious, and that's the worst part. Help me, then grab your bags and follow me. It's on the way to the students' rooms. Eraserhead wrapped up with drying off the dishes and began to organize them. Remember to get to sleep quickly, we've got a big day tomorrow. After finishing the last of the dishes, Midoriya set up in his own small room. It was just like his own room, with one bed, one desk, and not much else. His bags went down as he checked the time and Kirishima laughed while Midoriya internally debated some of the minor details. He wanted to fight all of the kids at once, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to do it at the beginning or end of this training session. He'd ask the students. This whole thing was for them, so he'd keep it consistent. Now that everyone's here, let's get this over with. I'm Ken, and I'm in charge of your remedial lessons. Any questions on that front? Midoriya put the papers down, tossing them at his bag before facing the students. He was wearing the bodysuit and Beowulf, the gauntlets and boots, along with the bandana and nothing else fancy. He'd probably ditch the bodysuit in a minute too if he didn't have to fight exam F right now. Oh, I've got one. Who are you? Mina leaned in either direction, trying to make sense of it. He certainly didn't look like a hero right now, with a set of baggy pants on over the bodysuit along with lame gray shoes. He looked more like Mook number 3 than someone important, and that was just how he liked it. Yeah, I've never heard of you. Is UA hiring hobos or some shit to teach us? Bakugo's wit was as scathing as ever, but he probably just wanted to get to the training. What makes you qualified to teach us? Excellent questions, both of you, but please one at a time. I am an outside force brought in by your principal for the purpose of training you. I am not a professional hero if that was what you meant, Miss Mina and Mr. Bakugo. That caused some confusion among the kids, but none of them directed their questions at him, so he continued on after a moment's pause. I am first going to ask you some simple questions, answer by a show of hands. Does everyone understand? Took the kids a second to get what he was going for, with Kaminari being the first one to raise his hand overzealously and nearly hitting one of the other students. Excellent. We're going to decide what you're going to train while you're here, between training your body, your technique, and your quirk. Raise your hand if you want to train your quirk. Midoriya started with the one he thought everyone was going to go for, and he was right. Every student except Kaminari, who quickly lowered his hand so fast he nearly hit a different student, wanted to train their quirk. Alright, I'll ask Kaminari later what he wants to train. We will be having a remedial activity today but the majority will decide when we do it. Raise your hand if you want to do it now. This time no hands went up, with everyone wanting to push it off till later. Fine with him, but it meant he put down the stack of papers for nothing. Alright students, follow along. We'll set each of you up in a jiffy. The group moved across the training grounds and thinned out as each student was dropped off or sent to fetch the equipment for their training until only Kaminari and Sensei were left. Ronin checked the list one last time, nodding to himself as he worked through it before closing it and giving his undivided attention to Kaminari. So, Kaminari, what did you want to train? Your body, your techniques, or did you change your mind and want to join your schoolmates training your quirk? Kaminari looked over the sea of students, each doing a weird variety of things. No two exercises were exactly the same, each designed to fit the student. Ronin had training sets for each of the exam F kids, so he probably had one for Kaminari too if he wanted to. Hey, Sensei, what do you think is best? Kaminari, you shouldn't let me affect your decisions too much. You have different strengths and weaknesses than me. I know. I've never seen you blow your brain from overusing your quirk. Kaminari laughed then looked out of everything again. Quote. But what do you think is the best for me? In your, Sensei, mindset. Quote. I think I'll tell you what your training would be first, then I'll double back and explain my thoughts. Ronin flipped through his papers again and spoke without glancing up. Denki Kaminari, you would be using your quirk on a generator for long periods of time. That's it. Compared to what he had done yesterday with the constant stance corrections, the dodging training, and the lecture on taking care of his sword, that seemed kind of dumb. And that was coming from him. It was grindy and boring work, which was right up his alley, but... Look around you, Kaminari, keeping in mind your training, and try to find the problem. Don't worry if you can't, it's a strange problem that doesn't make sense immediately. Ronin folded up the papers and looked over everyone with Kaminari. Everyone was busy with their work, and it seemed to be hard work of sorts. Iida was running laps in the distance. Todoroki was being forced to rapidly switch between creating large amounts of fire and ice. Bakugo was throwing huge explosions into the air. They all seemed to be working hard on their quirks by using them constantly, like Zero, who was just ejecting as much tape as he could from his body. Actually, Kaminari started to think about Aizawa's words too as he looked a little closer at each of his classmates, since he knew what their quirks were. Uraraka was flying through the air while using her quirk on herself, Sato and Momo were eating food while using their quirks, Aoyama was just firing lasers into the air. Couldn't all of them just do this in their own free time? Ronin immediately smiled, cluing Kaminari in that he got it right. Excellent, Kaminari. That's my problem with these exercises. They're simple, alright. Too simple. Every single training you see could have been done on UA grounds, and that would have saved you the bus trip while being able to sleep in our own beds. Quirk training is just pushing your quirk to its limits for long periods, but you could do that in your own time. If you want to train your quirk like this, all you have to do is borrow a training room from UA for an hour and go nuts. In 1 month of consistent training, you'd have more gains than if you did it here, provided you're taking proper breaks. Sue, I should do this quirk training stuff. But I should do it at UA. Oh, it's like late night gaming. You try to make a bunch of progress in one night, but at the end you're super tired and you keep messing up so you're not getting as far. Kaminari pieced together his response from bits and pieces of his master's monologue, and his master nodded in return to confirm his theories. Yes, exactly, Kaminari. Excellent work. It's much better to do consistent work than irregular bursts. Hell, for your quirk, you wouldn't even need to put the electricity into a generator. Just using your quirk for long periods would help. Ronin then turned away from the students to face Kaminari head-on. Some of your classmates need certain objects to train, but most of them could be acquired in their own free time if they really wanted to train their quirks. Which is why I believe training your quirk here is a waste of time. Training my quirk here? Like, specifically here. Kaminari followed Ronin back towards where they started, the forested spot with Ronin's bags, as Ronin nodded. Yup, this is a forest. It has certain features that you can't get at UA, and it's not the ability to use your quirk wildly. Ronin kicked up his bag and caught it out of the air, then turned back. Unfortunately, you're not far enough along yet to take advantage of that yet. With a little luck though, by tomorrow we'll be getting started with it. If, of course, you want to. You haven't picked an option yet and have just been following me. Well, you didn't answer my question about which one you think I should. So ha, Kaminari retorted with a smile. I think I want to continue what we were doing yesterday, learning how to really use my sword and dodge. Would that be a technique, or my body, cause it was kind of both. A great realization, Kaminari. Training technique often involves training your body. To be honest, I'm rambling again. Get your hero kit and get changed, then meet me here in 5 minutes. We'll start your training immediately. Midoriya looked over Kaminari in his harrowing outfit, a little confused. Long pants, a radio thing on the side of his head, and the vest that Midoriya had given him his internship ended. Aren't you going to get hot? A little, but weren't you? You wear WAAAY more stuff than me. The coat, the pants, the long shirt. Midoriya walked around Kaminari, inspecting everything. At least his shoes were functional. All of my clothing is designed to keep me alive and blend into the background. Well, my outfit is. Both of them had gotten changed into different outfits. Midoriya dropped the bodysuit and coat for a small thin shirt while keeping the baggy pants and Beowulf. Oh well, that's irrelevant. Let's get started. Get into position. Wraith walked around Kaminari as he took his pose, inspecting him for any obvious faults. Back legs too far out. Remember, you shouldn't be leaning to the side a good. Back to standing. And take your stance again. They picked back up with correcting Kaminari's stance, hammering back in the lessons from yesterday for 5 minutes before moving on to movement. Terrible pun somewhat intended. Only when Kaminari got used to moving around while staying in guard did they tackle new problems, just by moving into the forest a little. Kaminari didn't understand the new problem until he started trying to move around in the forested area, hitting a root with his foot on the first step and losing his balance. He caught himself before he fell, but that's when Midoriya stepped in and tapped him with the sword. What went wrong, Kaminari? Wraith let Kaminari think it through, but this wasn't a hard question. I tripped and you poked me. Wraith nodded to confirm the aspiring hero's suspicions. You took your eyes off me too, and when you tried to stop yourself from falling you majorly broke your own posture. You got used to the flat ground and didn't account for the big benefit of this area. Wraith leaned on his sword, but this was probably too much information for Kaminari to perceive at once. You didn't drown a dehydrated man, and you had to take things at their pace. Look down, Kaminari. They both looked at the forest floor, at a mess of roots and loose rocks that coated the ground. The ground's kind of whack, so it makes me trip. Yup, we're gonna try to teach you to become better at handling this kind of terrain. If you can maintain posture here, you can do it almost anywhere. Ronin took a step back away from Kaminari. I'm not going to keep prodding you when you break posture, that'd just be annoying. When you think you're ready though, just say the word, and we can start testing how good you really are. I can still ask you for help, right? Ronin nodded with a smile. Of course, I'm not going to just stare at you as you work. I'm here to help you learn. His gaze naturally shifted to Aizawa and Vlad King in the distance, who were doing some combination of jack and shit between the two of them other than making sure no one goofed off. Alrighty. You can do this too, right? Can I watch you for a minute? Ronin stood up and nodded, tossing the stick to Kaminari. Excellent idea. Watch my legs and my eyes. Well, my head. I'm going to try and overdo it so it's obvious what you need to do. Ronin's steps seemed to slide across the ground, moving very slowly and carefully while he never looked down. You can use your eyes to see where you're going so you don't need to check later. If you look only at your feet, you lose track of what's coming and might get attacked. Like a small paw, I get you. It was like pocket monsters when you were in the dark cave and couldn't see shit. You wanted to be aware of what was around you, that way you could avoid it like when Sensei poked him. Sensei hadn't poked him just to say he messed up well, not to just say he messed up but because normally Kaminari could have dodged it. Ronin didn't hit him with a sword swing or a cool cutting move, he just poked him gently with the sword, something that Kaminari was usually good at dodging. But, because he hadn't been paying attention to his surroundings, he didn't. Hey, why do you slide your feet everywhere? Is that part of the technique? Ronin glanced down at his feet quickly, chuckling to himself. I suppose. It's a part of something else, but it's become second nature to me, I'm afraid. Ronin did a step forward to demonstrate while he spoke. The sweeping motion is for avoiding small things underfoot, like rocks or twigs. Instead of stepping on them, I push past them and, hopefully, put my foot on solid ground. You're not supposed to drag your feet, because that's a waste of energy, but maybe in this messy terrain it might be a little safer to lose some energy just so you can get good footholds. It's also helpful for being quiet, but that'll come up tonight. Are you ready to get started yourself? Kaminari nodded, standing up fully for a moment before dropping into the correct posture. His lead leg came forward while his back leg went sideways, crouching in the knees and leaning forward at the hips. Ready. It didn't take long to adjust to the new environment, so they kept shifting the environment. Midoriya didn't want his student to adjust to the terrain, he wanted Kaminari to adjust to the concept. If they trained in one area for too long, Kaminari would get used to that ground and could treat it like even ground, defeating the purpose of this exercise. It was after 20 minutes that Kaminari made his first attempt at the test. The pair changed grounds again, stood a little more than a sword's range apart, and Ronin explained the rules. Dodge 5 hits and you pass. Any questions? Do I get anything for hitting back? Quote. No, since we're just trying to train your ability to protect yourself right now. I don't want you to try and tackle me, I want you to practice your footwork. Do you remember why footwork is important? All swordsmanship starts at the feet, sir. Quote. I was gonna say it starts at the legs, but I suppose the feet do come first. Kaminari might have misquoted him, but the student got the general concept right, so he wasn't complaining. Good luck, and remember to focus on me with your eyes. The ground is tricky, but an opponent is trickier. Ready. Rewait, ready. Kaminari stopped himself briefly, then got into his fighting posture and finished his affirmation. Begin. The first test went about as well as Kaminari thought. Horribly. First test he got hit by a thrust, but at least it wasn't a poke. Second test he backed into a tree and got poked, much to his own dismay. From the third to the seventh test he managed to dodge the first hit only to get tripped up or hit by the second hit. On the eighth test he got lucky and made it all the way to the fourth hit, but then fell on his ass and got bonked. Now, he was on his 12th attempt, and had quickly stopped to drink some water. Sensei, any pointers? Look around before the fight starts, that way you can find any big problems before they happen, for example, me constantly leading you into trees. That should make you improve a lot. Ronin looked up, thinking for a second. Don't just go back all the time. You even step back even when you're dodging to the side. Make me work for a hit, and me walking forward isn't working for anything. Kaminari nodded, then got a great idea, his face breaking into a huge smile. Quote. I getcha. I've got a plan. Come on, I'm ready. He stepped into his posture with eyes locked on Ronin who nodded, then took his own stance. Then begin. Kaminari immediately took off to the left side, running straight past Ronin and dodging the first attack, but he didn't stop there. He turned around to keep his eyes on his teacher while continuing to move backward, but he faced his teacher at an angle. Good. Make me chase you. Ronin spoke with a loud voice as he chased after Kaminari, going for another swing. As soon as his arm began to move for the swing, Kaminari started to run again. He never stopped moving entirely so he could always keep moving, staying just out of range of his teacher and forcing his sensei to make attacks that he normally wouldn't. You said this stance is about moving, so what if I never stop? Can't hit what ain't there. Kaminari purposely baited his teacher into coming closer, then ducked to one side and ran past him to better ground. It was just like a video game, using dodge rolling and running to stay far away from an opponent and bait them into attacking so you can get the counter hit. Ronin moved forward again, stepping in for a wide swing to whack Kaminari with. His legs were spread far apart for this attack, but Kaminari remembered what he said about wide stances. Aren't you a little too wide, boss? Kaminari stepped into Ronin's attack and kicked at his front leg, speaking as he moved. If the stance is too wide, you might fall over like tea. Uh-oh. Instead of kicking out Ronin's leg, though, his leg bounced off Ronin's and made him lose balance, causing him to fall over and get bumped again. Damn it, I was on the fourth hit again. Yes, but you made remarkable progress in the meantime. Trying to disrupt my own attack to force me to miss instead of trying to dodge. You're trying to take control of the opponent, I see. Ronin helped him up, then checked the time. We're ahead of schedule. Would you like some more practice or want to get straight into another attempt? Another try, I got this. Just don't get carried away. Kaminari pumped himself up and smiled, following his master along into the forest before going straight into his stance. Ready, sir. Then begin. Kaminari started the test by moving backward to build distance, then would move to the side and force Midoriya to chase him down. He'd never go for the best swing, or never go as fast he could, letting Kaminari set the pace. Wraith didn't make large mistakes, just non-optimal ones. When an overhead would be best, he'd go for a sideways slash or a thrust. When he could change his ground and get into a better position, he'd instead sit back and try to work with the old position. Kaminari would stay just at the edge of Midoriya's reach, then jump back as soon as Midoriya started to swing. By dodging early, he had an easier time dodging. Plus it meant he was getting good at recognizing the swings since he could dodge them in advance. It took quite a few tries, but in the end, Kaminari managed to avoid 5 whole swings while staying in good form. Although Kaminari didn't know it and kept running away for another minute until he stopped trying to dodge nothing and finally listened. Really, I really did it. You know, I kind of thought it'd be more dramatic and stuff. Cause this feels kind of lame. Not to be rude, but yeah. That's how you know you did it. Kaminari had ditched his vest and rolled up his pants from being too hot and was onto his third water already. It seemed he hadn't been put in these kinds of hot conditions for this long before while wearing his costume, probably because his heroism class was only an hour and today was already a scorcher. Alright, we're taking 5. Get into something comfortable and put on something that won't cook you, then meet me back here. We've got more work to do and I've got to check up on the other students. Got it, sir, and thanks. Midoriya tossed him a 4th water bottle before he left, then turned and started to jog over to the students to see how they were doing. First on his list was Bakugo, who he checked in on from a respectable 20 meters away. Bakugo was dipping his hands into boiling water then pointing them skywards to create massive explosions, doing this constantly to open up his sweat glands. Or something. Nezu was pretty clearly talking out of his ass on this. The boiling water is to make his hands hot, but he's creating explosions. His hands are going to get hot anyway, the water should be to stop him from doing permanent damage to his hands. Did anyone think this through? He mumbled to himself, but he had to admit, he got some kicks out of seeing his former bully screaming in pain. Not for long though, both from pity and from his ears hurting from both screaming and explosions. He approached and spoke to the student. Everything going all right? Fine, shut up. Bakugo was entirely focused on creating more and more explosions, probably pissed off at the demonstration this morning. Got it. Also, for the next hour, no fire. He at least would stop Bakugo from doing serious damage to his hands while pretending he was making the training harder so Bakugo would accept it, picking up the barrel with his gauntlets and moving it off the fire before setting down a water bottle in case the hothead needed it. Keep up the hustle. God damn it. Bakugo kept on creating explosions without batting an eye, but that annoying brat wasn't really his concern too much. He moved on to the next student, Mina, who was just outputting tons of acid into a cliff right underneath Zero. How are you holding up? Need anything? Some water? Yes, thank you so much. Mina gladly took a break and stopped creating the constant flow of acid, drinking in the water happily. I felt like I was shriveling up. You create acid, right? That probably uses the water in your body, so you might have been. He just took a shot in the dark since he hadn't gotten a chance to really study her quirk, but she seized up for a moment before trying to inhale the rest of the bottle. Hey, slow down. Just remember to drink often. It's going to be hot out, so pace yourself. Got it, Gramps. She gave him a thumbs up before finishing her water, not drinking it slowly, then going back to creating more acid. He shook his head before glancing up, checking around to see if anyone was paying attention to him, then scaling the cliff in a few seconds to reach the top and Zero, who was putting tons of tape out of his body. You alright? Need something to eat? Zero was on his knees staring into the sky as he launched tape out of his body, barely noticing Midoriya for a second. Hey, you alright? Midoriya put a hand to Zero's head and neck to check his temperature and hydration. Usually, if someone's neck was cold, it meant they were very dehydrated, but Zero didn't seem that bad yet. Stop using your quirk and drink this, kid. Midoriya handed the tall kid another one of his water bottles from the big bag of stuff then crouched down next to him. How are you feeling? You've been using your quirk for a while and you might be running out of materials soon. Gramps, I've been running nearly empty for like 10 minutes. What was with everyone calling him Gramps today? Was it because they were kids or just the type of people they were? But more importantly, materials, also known as food. Because the students had a rushed breakfast, not everyone ate enough for the day, so the students who propelled something from their body like acid or tape would eventually run out of things to turn into acid or tape, basically starving their quirk. That was a way to increase efficiency and reduce material consumption, but that wasn't what these kids were trying to increase right now. Understood, take a quick break and meet me over by that bag if you want something to eat. Midoriya pointed to his weaponry bag, still by where he and Kaminari had been training, then gave Zero a protein bar. This isn't much, but it's something if you need it. Don't rush yourself and call out if you need help, that's why we're here. Quote. Man, you could never work at UA. You actually give a shit about us. Zero laughed it off, his mood seeming to have improved, but that wasn't a good thing. Rate's eyes swept the scene and locked onto the two teachers who were just watching over the students. Maybe they'd intervene if someone passed out, but other than that they seemed content to just watch. So it would seem. Good work so far at least, but I've got to run. Midoriya glanced over the edge at the mound of tape Zero had made so far, impressed, then walked off the ledge calmly. He turned Beowulf's pull function on, pulling him towards the wall, and slid to the bottom of the cliff with practiced ease. He'd tried something similar before, but this was his first time trying it on unstable stone. But that wasn't relevant to Midoriya's quick safety checkups, and next was the guy eating cake. The difficulty of these trainings varied wildly, it seemed. He was next to a girl with a large ponytail who was eating chocolates while creating weird, Russian doll things. Something out of her arm. This was the first group he felt 100% safe approaching, with no chance of getting accidentally caught in a quirk. Sato, you doing alright? He really wasn't worried about Sato outside of a toothache, but the big student pointed to a van located nearby. More food, please. The cake he was eating was nearly gone, as well as the soda he was drinking. Midoriya gave him a thumbs up and went over to the van, pulling out another cake and placing it on the table in front of Sato before going back for the soda, an object that didn't require both hands. Anything you need, Miss Yaoyorozu, while I'm here. He was nearby and he had a minute, but he didn't expect much and that's exactly what he got. No, I'm fine for now, thank you. He didn't know much about her, but he did remember she was terrible at fighting in close quarters. If anyone needed to learn how to properly fight, from his memory, it should have been here. She stood out to him from when he served as a pop quiz to 1A because everyone he talked to praised her intelligence. Her dossier, her principal, even the normally stoic eraser had mentioned it. She was smart like they said, being the only group that managed to complete their sub-objective and still fail the exercise, but she had still failed. She had just stood there while he dismantled her team and then gotten shot in the head 6 times. If he was using real bullets, she'd have been every shade of dead with no one but her own bad reflexes to blame. But, once again, he was nitpicking. That was in the past, and she wasn't even one of his students. Who knows, maybe she changed for the better since they last met. It wasn't likely, but at least it wasn't impossible. Either way, no one was going to lose points for it, unlike Eraserhead and Vlad King for standing around while their students threw themselves into these wastes of time. But that was irrelevant and not important right now. Right now he had to check up on his students because it seemed no one else cared. He scanned the scene for his next student, Monoma, who was running around and touching as many other students as he could. From Midoriya's notes, it seemed Monoma could copy other quirks he could touch. This was another low-risk approach, so Midoriya intercepted him while he was catching his breath and trying out some of the quirks he collected. Monoma, everything going alright? Need anything? Ha, I'm doing perfectly well and require no aid, old man. You think I need your assistance? Ah, yes, the notes also said he had a pretty similar ego to Bakugo. Midoriya nodded at Monoma and tossed a water bottle at his face. Don't get sun poisoning. He didn't want to try and help someone who didn't want the help, like Bakugo and Monoma, so he'd gladly leave. He'd still do his best to offer them some help, but this was the way they wanted to do things. That meant he could move on to the next and last student, Kirishima. Another student he remembered vividly from the pop quiz for the wrong reasons. Kirishima had been reckless, constantly separating from the group and not slowing down when he should have. He had a bad habit of not thinking things through apparently, much like another student Midoriya was teaching. Kirishima was currently fighting against another student, the one with a big tail. Well, that was a stretch. Kirishima and Tail Guy were running around the open cliff in the sunlight, with Tail Guy hitting Kirishima repeatedly while Kirishima did jack shit. Kirishima was blocking, supposedly, but he really wasn't doing much. His method of blocking was actually pretty bad, and his footwork sucked. On the other hand, he had no clue how this was supposed to help Tail Guy. Maybe this was supposed to toughen up his tail. But then he should hit something more consistent, like the cliffside. If he wanted to improve his strength, that was a no-go too. When you wanted to work on your biceps you lifted weights, you didn't start punching things. This whole thing seemed like a mess to him, but he wasn't a hero teacher. What did he know? Sensei Tilda, what's taking so long? Kaminari was wearing shorts now, but he still had his belt and sword on and a functional set of shoes. If they went the hero routes, they might suggest that the support course make their students' clothes a little more functional and a little less flash. The weakling would be much better off with thin long pants so he could avoid minor injuries to his legs, light skin knees. Just finishing the checkup, I'll just be a minute. This is the last one and then I'm going to help Saru, you're here too. I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted. He snapped out of his thoughts and took in the scene properly. Zero was with Kaminari, but Midoriya had been too busy thinking to get work done. A mistake he'd tried to avoid. No prob teach. Zero at least dropped the gramps, tone and moved on to a new frontier, although he wasn't sure if this was much better. So he focused on Kirishima and Tail Guy instead. They took regular breaks to both get their stuff together, so he was just waiting for one of those to check up on Kirishima. So, Kaminari, where have you been? Practicing standing again. Practicing stances, not standing. Why on earth would I have someone stand for? 2 hours. He had to glance up to guess the time. It was at least 7 in the morning, so around 2 hours since they started if you were generous with the rounding. Still, why on earth would someone stand around for 2 hours? Standing around for that long isn't training, it's a punishment used in the military by people who like to shout a little too much. Really? Zero seemed genuinely surprised, which made Midoriya a little worried. What did those kids think Kaminari was doing? Yeah, I also practiced walking back and forth. Watch. Kaminari demonstrated with a big smile, doing the small steps with 100% confidence. Not bad EHWH, why are you laughing? Zero was busting up, seeing just how seriously Kaminari was taking just scooting forward and backward. Midoriya could understand, on its own it looked pretty stupid, but still. Seriously. Yeah, it was really hard at first but now, I've gotten way better at it. I even practiced while I was waiting. Kaminari kept demonstrating, making Zero laugh harder. Kaminari, did you explain to everyone what we did while they made their way down the mountain? Midoriya had the sinking suspicion that Kaminari might have explained everything in an equally terrible manner, which is probably why no one found out their third teacher was one of the top 10 villains in Musudafu. Course I did. We stood around, we sat around, and I helped cook. What's more did? Midoriya really liked Kaminari, he really did, but even he couldn't resist facepalming at this. Well, I guess we'll see what you've been doing tonight. Oh thank God, they're done. Midoriya was eternally grateful for a way out of this conversation and quickly approached Kirishima and Tail Guy. Hello, how's everything going over here? Pretty well Gigi. Now they were even throwing Gramps slang at him. Wraith was right, this trip was a mistake. Why, is something up? Did you want to change our exercise? No, nothing is wrong that I know of, I'm just checking up on you. I could change the exercise, but if this is working for you too it's fine. Really? Both looked at each other for a moment, then Tail Guy smiled. I'm fine right now, thank you for asking. I think this is the first time someone's ever checked up on us during training. Midoriya remembered how aesthetic Nezu had been while Ronin had been demolishing his students and how reckless that rat had been. Quote. I can imagine. Just something to drink would be great Gigi, today's gonna be hot and it's barely started. Kirishima opened up his jumper a little more as he spoke and stretched, before catching a water bottle to the face. Gah. Oh, thanks. What are you two training anyway, durability? He said it more as a joke, but both nodded. Seriously. Well, I'm trying to make my tail stronger too, but this activity doesn't really do that. I'm hoping I can switch it up tomorrow. At least the martial artist understood that this exercise was only going to make his tail tougher. No offense Kirishima. Nah, it's the same here. You can only hit so hard and for so long, so to be honest unless you start hitting harder, this is more an endurance thing for me. Kirishima was also pretty honest. They were, in theory, a good matchup, but in practice, they lacked the power to push the other to grow. Ironically, they needed to get stronger to make the other one stronger. Midoriya checked the time again, muttering to himself as he tried to think clearly for a solution to these minor problems. They could just sit back and do nothing, the easiest solution of all no. They said they were gonna help, so they were going to at least help these students as much as possible. Alright, since they had a clear goal with clear parameters, Wraith could work with this. Understandable, I'll get something done about it. Kaminari, go ask Eraserhead if the buses have one spare wheel while I go get some food for Zero. You too, I don't know both your names I'm afraid, but I'll be with you in a minute. Wraith turned away and moved towards the kitchen with Zero in tow. The goal was clear and obvious, help the students train. The parameters were clear too, use the things available on site. Zero needed protein to turn into tape, so they'd stock him up on food for his training. Tail Guy needed a target that didn't just force his tail to become more durable, but to become stronger, and if Wraith had his way, a few more things. Kirishima needed a force strong enough to force him to grow, and if things went well he'd have just the man for the job when he was done. Nezu wanted him to train these brats. Fine. Then Wraith wouldn't just train them, he'd force them to be the best they could be, even if that was better than they thought they could become. Chapter End Notes. Yo Yigity yo, my pretentiousness has reached maximum levels. Howdy, how's it going? Let's get into this mess because I have a lot to write. So, firstly, been a long time since we've had any real sword skills in this mess that's supposed to be injecting fighting techniques into Hero Aka. I blame the writer, that guy seems pretty dumb. We're gonna stay focused on this going forward with the camp, so here's hoping it's understandable and that someone thinks it's useful, cause it really isn't since modern fencing doesn't take place outdoors. Also, the foot sweeping thing, a small detail is that when sword fighting don't drag your feet. What Midoriya is talking about that I'll go into more detail about later is avoiding stepping on things that are obviously loose like large sticks or rocks by keeping your feet low to the ground. Midoriya just says it's okay to drag your feet at the start because you're starting out, and it's better to waste a little energy dragging your feet than taking a big step onto unstable ground and fall on your ass. Finally, the culmination of my pretentiousness. Perhaps all my pretentiousness was just build up for this great moment. Alright, I'm being dramatic. So, in these notes, I have complained many a time against Horikoshi's writing, and we've come to one of the things that, for me, makes sense at a glance but the more you think about it doesn't make sense. The students' training is, in total, really weird. Some of them are fine, some of them are just wastes of time, but I wanted to go through all of them really quick so that I hit every single one of them, in order that they're presented in their class roster, what their training was shown to be in my opinion on it because this is totally a review show. Aoyama fires a laser into the sky over and over to increase how long he could fire his laser without problems. It's fine. Basic but makes sense. Mina shoots acid into a cliff over and over to make her hands more durable. Also fine and basic, but she should probably need to eat and drink more or risk running out of materials, but this is the first case where the thing they're training is stupid. This comes from the sub-anime, by the way, and also, what? She's training to make her hands more durable. Not to make more acid with less material, or output more acid at once, but make her hands more durable. This was never shown to be a problem and doesn't address when she makes acid from her feet. Tsuyu climbs a cliff with all her muscles to make her stronger. She's just rock climbing. I get that she's a frog and she can climb surfaces, but they don't have her doing this with weights or anything. We've seen her climb before, it's obvious that she can suspend her own body weight. She should have had a training dummy or something she had to practice bringing up and down the cliff. Iida, basic running to increase endurance and leg strength, and that's it. This is very basic and fitting for the most basic and an interesting member of the main three. Seriously, are they saying he doesn't do this at home? Couldn't he train by using Recipro Burst over and over again to try and get used to it? He's not even training his quirk really. Uraraka spins in a bubble to make her less nauseous. This isn't training her quirk, this is training her. I like the concept behind it, but it's not quirk training. Quirk training would have been making her get used to lifting heavier and heavier objects. I'm not sure why this one wasn't included, because this is literally the most generic type of training and I don't know why she's not doing it. Ojirio hits Kirishima over and over with tail to increase the strength of their quirks. First off, that phrasing is so generic and vague it gives their training no meaning. Second, hitting Kirishima over and over would hurt his tail, but it wouldn't make him stronger. Punching steel over and over doesn't make you stronger, it breaks your hands, and Kirishima is harder than steel. This is a bad idea for Ojirio. It might increase his defense. Kaminari electrocutes a generator to get used to firing off large amounts of electricity. This one isn't bad, but it's what he does every day. Seriously, this isn't training for Kaminari, he already does this every time he gets into a fight. Secondly, the generator's pointless and doesn't do anything, unless Kaminari's powering their summer camp. This is fine, it's just not great and a little confusing. I'm going to continue this rant in the comments, so sorry it's taking so long but I really wanted to rant about it somewhere and I guess it's here. Chapter 123. Chapter Summary. Midoriya changes up the training schedule so the training actually trains people instead of makes them waste their time. Chapter Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya led the group of students to the outdoor kitchen, ducking inside the building to quickly to grab ingredients. Zero, what food do you need to eat to create that tape? Fibers and proteins, I think. Fibers. What foods had a lot of fiber? Oats. Also good for protein too, so he grabbed a large bag of that and headed outside. Your meal plan is this bag then, kid. You know how to make oatmeal. Midoriya dumped the bag at the student's feet while staring him down, just begging for a response. Yeah, but isn't that a lot? Great. Get some food in you, here's some honey if you need some flavor, get going, and good luck. He patted the student on the shoulder and moved past him. You need any help, I'd recommend asking the other teachers right now but I should be available in 20 or so minutes. Sorry I'm rushing right now, didn't think I'd have to do all this. Midoriya started to leave but stopped himself, remembering one last thing on his mind. Also, stop standing on a cliff and shooting your tape off the side, just do it into a ditch so you don't risk falling off. Why were you even out there in the first place? Aizawa told me to. Zero glanced around, confused, and Midoriya gave him one last helping hand before he ran to deal with the next student. Pots are in the big cabinet, ladles are in the drawer to the right of the cabinet, and I've got to run. Remember to ask for help if you need it. Midoriya then hurried off to deal with the next problem, Kirishima and Tail Guy's training. Kaminari, did you ask your teachers about the spare tire like I asked? Outside in the training field, Kaminari and Kirishima were messing around with the tire. Kaminari was inside it while Kirishima sent him rolling around the grounds, with Ojiro off to one side watching the mess unfurl. He tilde ey sen tilde say tilde. Is tilde this tilde what tilde you tilde one tilde ted? Yes and no, Kaminari. So, Tail Guy, I don't know your name and I'm sorry. I'm Ken, and you are. Midoriya interrupted Kaminari's wild ride and took the wheel before trying and immediately giving up on lifting the bus's tire. The thing easily weighed over 100 pounds, and it was not worth the effort to get it off the ground. Ojiro sir. Midoriya rolled the tire over to Ojiro, instead of lifting the thing, stopping in front of him and leaning on it for support. Think you can lift this thing with your tail? He tapped the wheel twice before stepping back and out of the student's way as Ojiro nodded. I think so, and I will try. Ojiro grounded himself with his feet and put his tail through the big hole, lifting it off the ground easily and making Midoriya feel kind of weak. Yes sir. Fantastic, cause I don't want to get another tire. Midoriya stretched his back out, finishing up his thoughts on what he wanted Ojiro to do. This activity wasn't very well planned out, but he didn't think he'd have to make new activities for any of the students. So, are you ready? Quote. Yes. He looked pretty uncertain for someone who said they were ready, but whatever. Midoriya was just trying to get everything sorted out right now, he'd go back and fix it later if he needed to. This tire. I don't want it to touch the ground for the next 10 minutes, and you're not allowed to grab it. You can only keep it in the air by hitting it. Sound good. This was Midoriya's plan that he thought up in about 20 seconds, so it probably could be improved, but right now Midoriya had a lot still on his plate. Yeah, I think so. You think, but you don't know, and that implies a question. What's your question? Quote. What does this do? I'm just going to hit a tire over and over. I can already lift myself with this tire, and I'm definitely heavier than it. Now he was making Midoriya feel like shit for not being able to lift it earlier, but it was unintentional. Probably. Excellent question that, if I'm copying your normal teacher's style, I'll leave you to figure out. Just try it out for 10 minutes. Come find me after that and we'll go from the area. I'll be by that bag over by the trees. Midoriya pointed over while maintaining eye contact. Hopefully the point of this activity will be clear about 30 seconds in. Remember, try to keep the tire in the air as long as possible and no grabbing it. Sorry, I'm rushing this. No, thank you for coming over and trying to help. But I'm not sure how helpful this will be. I will try. Midoriya gave him a thumbs up and looked over his last two students, Kirishima and Kaminari. The duo was laughing loudly already. They seemed to get along well, which was good. Camaraderie was always nice, and it meant they would hopefully work together well when they were both training together with him. But, since I've got to teach Kirishima with hands-on shit now, I wish we did the fight this morning. Wraith mumbled to itself as it thought through this mess they were in. Letting the students choose was a mistake, he should have just done it himself. Everything was easier with hindsight though, and Wraith would use the materials he'd been given. Kirishima, go to the bus and find your hero suit, it's in the front compartment. Get changed and meet me at the bag in 5 minutes. Sorry I didn't tell you to do so earlier and just had you standing around, I'm winging this. Whoa, you brought my hero stuff. Alright, GG, I'll be back in a minute. Kirishima threw that weird nickname at him again as he ran off to the buses to fetch his kit, leaving Kaminari and Midoriya all alone again. And it only took way too long. They went straight into training after Sensei finished helping out all his classmates, probably cause he told everyone to come at different times if they had troubles. Ronin sent him straight into a more advanced version of what he'd been previously doing by giving him the ultimate challenge. Holding a stick and standing in place. A big part of a stance is how you hold the sword. Your legs get you in range to attack, but your arms get your sword to attack, defend, and a whole mess of other things. Your stance dictates how quickly you can do these things. For example, Ronin took a wide stance with his legs, leading with the left. He grabbed his stick with both hands and held it over his head with absolutely no defense in sight. This is called high guard, and it's designed to crush someone. Crush them. That didn't sound too heroic, but Ronin continued. Yes, it goes really well with a specific attack called the murder stroke, but all in all, it's about one thing. Overhead attacks. As he spoke, Ronin moved. His left leg stepped slightly forward as he pushed the stick off his shoulder and in a downward arc, quickly and cleanly slicing through the air before stepping back slightly and putting the stick back over his head. This stance or guard is designed to make it as easy as possible to perform overhead attacks while still being able to defend myself with the sword, makes sense. Choosing a stance lets you pick which moves you can use really fast. But, you can't really guard in that stance. So you're choosing what you're gonna be extra good and extra bad at by your stance. Ronin nodded and dropped his guard. Exactly. Excellent Kaminari. For you, right now, we're going to train with a basic guard position that you can use with the thunder breathing techniques. This should let pull off your moves and keep on moving quickly like you've been training to do. Mimic me. Ronin took a new guard, leading with the right leg this time. Hands rest at the waist, and the end of the sword should be about eye level for this length. Ronin faced Kaminari with his right shoulder pointing towards him, and Ronin's left shoulder pointing slightly away. They didn't directly face each other but were both at a slight angle. Good with the sword position, but remember your legs Kaminari. Yes Yuri. Kaminari glanced down, fixing his posture, then tried to take the rest of the stance again. Hands above the dick, sword ready to poke an eye out. However you remember it, Kaminari. Ronin brushed past that and continued with it. Keep the arms and hands relaxed, and move around a little. Get used to it, because you're going to be in that stance a lot. Gotcha sir. Kaminari inched forwards and backward, hitting the pommel of his sword stick a few times with his lead leg before he started adjusting the stance to fit him better and got to thinking. Quote. Hey, sensei, how do I run while in this stance? That's an advanced lesson, but since we're making such good time, I'll let you in on a secret. Ronin leaned forward a bit like he was about to spill some big news, resting his weight on his wooden sword stick. You don't. What? Then how do you get around? You run normally. Running has its stances and fighting has its stances, and they don't play nice with each other. Keep the sword tip up Kaminari, don't worry, this isn't quite useless. Ronin stood up and looked around before going over to a tree and leaning against it, sitting the sword beside himself, and crossing his arms. When you're running, are you fighting? Quote. I guess not. They're separate options in Pocket Monsters. Ronin nodded and continued. And when you're fighting, are you running? No, isn't that the same question twice? Sort of, it's complicated and we'll get into the details later, but for now we're keeping it simple. When you fight, you use a stance to help you fight. Can you fight without one though? Yeah, that's what I've been doing so far, right? Excellent, you're getting it done. Drag the back leg, push off a bit. Ronin reached into the bag and finally had one of those waters he'd been lobbing at everyone all morning for himself, then stretched. You can fight without a fighting stance and you can run without a running stance, but it's harder. Generally, if you want to switch what you're doing, you switch stances. That's why you have that. Ronin pointed over to the thing on Kaminari's hip, his sword, no. My sheath. Correct again. The sheath holds the sword so you can run better without poking your eye out, preferably while keeping hands above your dick. PFF tilde. What? Oh, I get it. I'm gonna get a new mantra for the stance thing. Thank God, that was your worst one yet. Ronin leaned back into the tree and rolled his shoulders. The two can mix and match, but generally it's hard to run while holding a sword and it's hard to sword fight without a sword, so they don't meet often. However, you have a certain set of moves that combines the two tilde. It took Kaminari a second to think, then he stopped dead. He checked his posture for his sword stance then switched into a new one, exclaiming it out loud. Thunderclap and Flash. It's an attack that switches me from defense mode to attack mode. You are nailing this pop quiz. However, you can already run and you can already use the Thunderclap and Flash. But what can you do after the Thunderclap and Flash? Ronin closed the water bottle and stood with a smile in the shade of the tree. We're going to give you some options Kaminari, and drill it into you so you can't forget your techniques. So I'm learning the basics of sword fighting so I can have a bigger combo and don't have to keep sheathing my sword. And you finished the quiz with flying colors, excellent work all around. With a little luck, we can also work your quirk into this mess, but I'm just focusing on the basics. I'll leave that to you, now stop standing around and start moving again. When you feel comfortable with it we'll talk again, but here comes Rocky. Ronin glanced out towards the main big building and the approaching red figure before picking up the sword stick again. Remember what to do if you need anything. Ask for help, and ask questions until I get it. You're a great hero kid. Stay sharp. Midoriya walked away from Kaminari who was getting to grips with moving still since he was distracted by their conversation for the entire time and focused on his next student. Unlike Ojiro, who had been partially involved with Midoriya by proxy, Kirishima was directly under him so it was his responsibility to make sure the aspiring professional hero grew and developed on this trip. Good morning. We haven't formally spoken before, but I am Ken and I am in charge of your development at this camp. Wraith stood tall, but he was still shorter than Kirishima even without the spiked hair. Good morning, sir. I'm Kirishima. They shook hands, with Kirishima taking in Ken's image for the first time. The scars, the muscles, the calluses, all of it. Whoa, were you a hero? What was your name? Never a hero, I'm afraid. Your quirk is hardening, correct? Transformation type, requires no outside material. Wraith checked the list as he spoke, inspecting Kirishima's hero outfit. He had a defensive quirk so he didn't cover most of his body. Clothes would just get torn up anyway, so it was a good call. Yes sir. It seemed he also got into the military attitude from Kaminari, even saluting his fellow teenager. The Ken disguise didn't look that old, this was just taking it too far. What formal training do you have? While Kirishima had been inspecting Ken, Wraith had been inspecting him. He had muscles, obviously, but if Wraith's memories were correct Kirishima was clueless about how to use them properly, literally walking straight into attacks. Quote. I have a punching bag. You have a punching bag. But you don't formally box. That was a little confusing, but it made sense. Kirishima seemed to be self-taught then like Midoriya was. He could work with that. Alright. Before I attempt to do anything idiotic we're going to have a quick match, just to see what you've got so far, Midoriya explained while making his way to a nice small spot in the forest but not in the opening. He liked the complicated mess of the forest, it put most people at a disadvantage and forced them to show as much talent as they had. 1 minute of fighting, yes you can hit back as hard as you like. A fight's between two people, not one person's tail and a very hard punching bag. He threw a little more shade at Kirishima's fight with Odora while picking his weapon. Do you have any questions? Are you sure I should hit you full force? I can break metal you know. Sir. He was doubtful but respectful, and that was something Midoriya could get behind. He wasn't sure of Midoriya, but he wasn't being a dick about it. That made him more respectable in turn. I am quite sure, but your concern and forethought are both noted and appreciated. Good traits for a hero. Thinking about his opponent's safety was always good. If you have doubts, go as hard as you think you should for the first round, and hopefully by the second round one of us will be eating their words. Alright, if you're sure. Kirishima shrugged it off while Midoriya picked up his stick, moving his right arm in circles before he started seriously using it. Ah, how rude of me. Have you stretched yet? Kirishima was just being a puck in a hockey game earlier, so he might not be warmed up yet. I'll be fine sir. Still rushing into things. Wraith predicted this first fight was going to be firmly in his control and would end whenever he liked, but Midoriya hoped not. At least some of the students had to know how to fight, right? Kirishima hardened his arms and crouched for his beginning stance while the old man in front of him flicked his right arm a few more times before limply pointing the stick at him. Are you ready? Don't underestimate me, Gigi. Facing him with just a stick. Oh, it must be his quirk, and that's why he was so confident right now. Oh, what's your quirk? Don't worry, I won't be using any quirks right now. The message would be muddled if I did. The message. This old guy was gonna take him on without using his quirk. You. Picked some weird teachers. Are you sure? We'll both find out whenever you say you're ready Kirishima. Best of luck. The old man bowed slightly, then turned his body. His eyes were locked onto Kirishima's they probably were under the bandana, his stick pointed at Kirishima's chest, but his body was facing a different direction entirely. He looked like Kirishima was going to knock him over with just one hit. If you say so. Ready. Kirishima rushed forward to take advantage of how unbalanced this old man was, not bothering to harden his arm on impact. This guy wasn't wearing any body armor after all, so. Thwack. The old man's stick seemed to disappear for an instant, then materialize out of thin air as it struck Kirishima's head right beside his right eye. Not guarding, are we? Kirishima blinked as he stumbled back, naturally flinching despite the hit not actually doing that much damage. Kirishima tried to find what hit him but there was nothing there, and to make it worse when his attention turned back to try and find his opponent. Are you watching this Kaminari? The old man's voice came from his left side, and before Kirishima could even finish looking that way with just his eyes his head was whacked a second time. This time though he blocked the attack with his quirk, hardening to nullify the attack as he turned to face the old man. He still had the same posture, standing thinly with one arm limply out while smiling casually and talking to the person behind himself. Great demonstration on the importance of stances. Yes sir. Kaminari waved hello from one side, drawing Kirishima's attention. Whack. Another attack slipped through, striking him on the side of the head. Kirishima stumbled before hardening his entire body and turning toward his attacker who was several feet away, stick at the ready. Don't be distracted and focus. Kirishima charged as the old man spoke, now taking this completely seriously as he swung with both of his arms. He pulled off attack after attack, constantly advancing towards his opponent while creating a wall of punches, but the old man was like water. He'd always slip around the punches, using his stick's superior reach to hit Kirishima and then retreat. He literally circled around Kirishima, letting his sword constantly bounce off the student's defenses. Now that Kirishima was hardening his whole body though, none of the hits got through, so it seemed they were at a stalemate. The stick rose and jabbed Kirishima in the eye, pushing him back a step instinctively as his eyes naturally blinked. Gotcha. Kirishima could barely make out the old man ditching the stick entirely and stepping in like a boxer, clenching both his fists to prepare for an exchange of punches. Finally, Kirishima could exchange some hits. Kirishima stepped in and threw a wide hook at the old man's body. Right hook again. Instead of trying to block, the old man also threw a right hook, ducking underneath Kirishima's punch before their arms hit each other. Their arms, not their fists, caught each other like hooks, muscle hitting muscle before the old man straightened his arm out and grabbed Kirishima by the back of the neck while trapping Kirishima's arm against his body. You tend to lead with hooks. Kirishima tried to turn his body to punch the old man, but the old guy's arm just wouldn't bend, forcing Kirishima to instead flail about while trying to get a hit in. He then tried to dig his feet into the ground to stabilize himself and maybe throw off the old man right as that old man wrapped his leg around Kirishima's, pushing it off the ground and suddenly applying a huge amount of force to the back of his neck. The old man probably said something witty, but Kirishima didn't hear it as he suddenly and involuntarily did a front flip straight into the ground, embedding himself in the stone up to his ears in the ground. He could feel the hand still on his neck, stopping any attempt to stand up before it started. He tried to do a push-up to get himself out of the ground, but by putting all of the weight on his neck the old man made it impossible. After a few seconds of flailing, Kirishima reluctantly tapped out. He also tried flailing around to try and hit the old man and knock him out before he gave up, but he just couldn't seem to find anything to hit. When he tapped out, the pressure that once pinned him down now lifted him up by his hero outfit, pulling him backward and up most of the way. Kirishima got his feet underneath him, dusting himself off quickly before checking out the hole he climbed out, easily a few inches deep into the ground. That took some serious power. Are you alright, Kirishima? His gaze quickly shifted to the old mano, the mysterious old man who both put him down and helped him up. Yes sir. Thank you, sir. Kirishima bowed on instinct like fourth kind, the hero he interned with after the sports festival taught him to. I seriously underestimated you, sir, sorry. You attempted to use the minimum force necessary and safely defeat me. There is nothing to be sorry for, but you're fighting. The mysterious old man, or mom for short, was gentle and casual with his reprimands, and that was what made it worse, how casually and kindly he told Kirishima that his fighting sucked. There was no malice, it was just a statement of fact. However, we're here to improve. Starting off on the wrong foot is no problem as long as you recognize it and improve. We all start off as good, but only through effort and improvement can we become great. I am rambling, I'm sorry. The mom shook his head with a wistful smile, then looked at Kirishima again. Sorry for wasting a bit of time. I've got to speak to Ojiro again soon, but I should leave you with something to do this time. The mom looked up towards Kaminari, who was still practicing his weird walking thing while holding a stick. Kaminari, are you feeling up for some hard practice for a few minutes? Yes, Yuri, sir, Kaminari said with a sloppy smile on his face, saluting playfully with the stick still in his left hand. Excellent, I'll be back soon. You two shouldn't go all out, this is only practice and I don't want you two to get badly hurt. However, this is practice, so do take this seriously, understand? The man looked over both of them, looking both in the eye as he spoke. Yes sir. Both boys nodded as Kaminari got into his weird pose thing still holding a stick, with Kirishima only a moment behind to take his starting position. Oh, and Kaminari. The MOM was starting to walk away but called over his shoulder. I told you to get serious. I'm not telling you to electrocute him, but do you think warriors use sticks when they're serious? No sir. Oh, I get it. Kirishima looked between the two, confused, while Kaminari dropped the stick and put a hand on his unsheathed katana, his smile growing as his stance changed. Is this gonna be like last time when I don't take this seriously as I probably should? Well, that's up to you till the thunder breathing. Chapter end notes. Yaki I like Pocky and I have no idea how to spell Yaki so it reads like Pocky. Yaki, who knows? Dude, this chapter was a mess to write especially coming after the last one. Something I wanted to illustrate in this was that, for the most part, Midoriya really wasn't expecting to need to change any major curriculums. He expected that he'd ask the class what they wanted to do, pretty much everyone would pick quirks and they'd all piss off to do their own things. The reason for this despite him saying he planned stuff out